Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another lifting episode. This portion, including the accompanying channel, is being recorded on 4/9/24, post eclipse. Now, before I begin, I will add the law of one. The law of one. When one is harmed, all are harmed. When one is helped, all are helped. So therefore, in the name of who I am, and I am one with all there is, I give thanks that this is done. So be it, and so it is. All right. I now open the circle to true benevolence with no conflicting agendas as of this moment in time here across time space were appropriate as various on moments, all sessions and expressions. Okay. What you're about to see is an older, what was a True You episode, one of the last ones ever recorded. You may have remembered this from our Patreon channel back in the day. It was an episode entitled What is God? And we have got rid of the True You franchise. I had to delete episodes. Pained me to have to do this. There was some weird energies coming through there. But anything that pertains to something newer, like my mother Joanna and I, we actually recorded 2 episodes and nobody saw. One is What is God? But actually saw that one. And then another one called Thoughts. No one ever saw that one. These were recorded back in 22. Without further ado, here is What is God?
Hi, everyone. It has been a long time, and we're all very happy to see you again. We've decided that we want to continue with our conversations through True You. And so it's been a while. It's been since the pandemic and before that. But we thought that it had great value as far as just having open, generalized conversation about different topics. So we're going to start this group small. As you can see, it's myself and Chris and Katrina, and we're going to start this small and see how it blossoms. We're thinking honestly that maybe one of the best routes would be feedback from you guys on maybe some topics or questions or conversations with things like that in the future. And we're just going to see how this blossoms. But we're really happy to be here. We're really happy to starting to share just generalized conversation again regarding any topic matter, and especially in these particular times where people are feeling so isolated and alone. So we hope this inspires everyone to think a little more about life and about things within life that are affecting you, and just provide some inspiration in that area. So today we decided to pick up, I believe Katrina can talk about this here in a second, that she, kind of was thinking about these things, but was inspired by a particular video that prompted her into thinking into certain topic areas. And so, Katrina, I'm just going to turn it over to you to basically just talk about the inspirations and the thoughts that you've been having.
Well, a few weeks ago, a friend sent me a YouTube video about a lady that had had a near-death experience. And when she went into this experience, she met with God. And the image of God that came through was all energy, no gender, very compassionate and loving, but it looked like a form of a human being with, say, like it was like lightning or electricity, like somebody being electrocuted. And when I saw that, for some reason, in a way, it upset me because I didn't want to think of God in that image. I wanted to think of God in the image that I had always thought of him as a little girl. And even though I don't completely believe all that stuff anymore, I still, somewhere inside of me, I need that image of God, which was like a grandpa sitting on a throne in heaven with tiers of angels behind him. And you go up forward in front of him, and an angel steps forward with a book of life. And if you're in it, good. If not, I would imagine that the whole bottom of the ground would open up and I would disappear. And, you know, I just like that idea of a grandpa. And I don't like the idea of the book of life or anything like this, but, you know, I started thinking about what do I want that image to be? And so I started reading sections of the Bible, and I remembered in Genesis, this is a King James version of the Bible, in the first chapter, the verse 26 to 27, and I'm going to read it because I want to say it correctly. God created man in his own image. That's how it starts out. Then it says, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish in the sea, over the fowl in the air, and over the cattle, and over all earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon earth. My question was, first, who is us? If it's just God speaking, why is he saying, let us? And does this just apply to earth? So is he looking like man, like humans, or just energy and spirit? Or is he not man or woman? He lives separately from us, or does God live in all of us? But the thing I was thinking about, did God create humans in their image? What about the other races in the universe? Is every race actually human? And God has many images, and he changes according to who he's talking to or who he's with. It's very confusing to me, because I do believe there's other races, many races in the universe. Is it the same God? Do they each have their own God? Or does he change his image according to who he's with? Any ideas?
Yeah, there's also a idea out there that all the many races, even if they're related to us, not related to us, it's more like the energetic template that is source energy that creates these other species that are very similar in the bipedal image, two arms, two legs. There's also genetic seeding that took place, but also source energies involved in that process as well. So you can say things along those lines, whereas that energy takes a different form for each species that believes in it or not believes in it, and and that source energy itself is encompassing all of those forms. Just like they say on Star Trek, infinite combinations, infinite possibilities, infinite combinations, things of that nature. Things of that nature. I don't have the quote exactly right, but I'm getting mind wiped a little bit even talking about this. So obviously they don't want this subject talked about. But this particular template exists all over the galaxy. Now you have these other species that are sometimes energetic or plasmoid types, and you have all these other types. Obviously, that's a source or godlike template as well, or from a different level, probably one we don't see or perceive. So it encompasses all these dimensions, expressions, all of these things. We, like that lady you were speaking about, pretty much saw an avatar of this, or she saw an alien trying to represent this. It could be either or, but source energy is both of those polarities, either the deceiver or the genuine. So you have both of these faces, and you have that throughout history. You have either beings imposing themselves as God or genuine source energy that encompasses everything. You have distortion of which, and then you have the genuine article that is more neutral throughout creation. Therefore, it can stamp different templates or across the vast amount of space. So it is really this is the same as saying God made us in his image, because is essentially that image is an infinite possibilities, infinite universes. So people always try to restrict that to humanity, but it's the same across the board.
So is it one God?
I would say, well, people have their own idea of what that should look like. But then you also have, again, beings posing as this that are essentially distortions of this or just tricksters. But then you have one source energy that's across the board, either positive or or negative polarity. So you also have other beings trying to take a photocopy of what creation is and turn it into their own god. Like the Orions have their own god, but it's like an AI based distortion cloud of what creation should be, sort of thing. What they think creation should be, and it wants to create its own template across creation. If that makes sense, it wants to take over. Is that so? Is there a separate God in some instances? I believe so, yes. But then you have the overall source energy that encompasses all spectrums. So you can say on one level they're the same, and on another level they're different. So yes, both of the answers are correct.
So I know we've all discussed that, how you and Joanna call it source. I call it God. I kind of looked up what people on the internet thought. I don't know if this is true, but I saw it written several places. What is source? It's the infinite creator that watches over the universe. Some think source and God mean the same, but others believe source is the creator, whereas God describes a creator entity who is extended from source, like we are, and watches over the universe. God is the overseer of the universe, but not all creation.
That would be making a distortion of source itself. There's also true benevolent source creator, and then there's, I call, dark creator, which would be like what the Orions have. So you have the distortions from the original neutral template. So I believe that's what was being described there. Yeah.
So it's kind of great that in that definition that you just said, Katrina, that the word infinite was used, because some people would also, I think the way that I look at source is what I kind of in my mind say is infinite intelligence. It's the being, the substance, whatever you want to call it, that everything else is within, including those that have learned the ability to create at a level, to create a being or create a shell for a soul to come into. I don't necessarily think some of these others, let's call them gods, that are within infinite intelligence or source, has the ability to create let's call it, I guess right now we refer to it as soul, to put in, but can they create a body, a visage, or something for an experience, for something else to come into? Most likely, but an original creation of the infinite intelligence deciding to have a piece of itself be not really technically separate, but separate in thought, to have an experience. In my mind, I kind of that only for the infinite intelligence to decide to want to do. But then what happens in the creation of everything and itself, the playground, people are in all different levels of being able to co-create within it. And I think some have risen to the level to be able to create a shell, a human visage, or something else that a soul can, then inhabit to have an experience. That's kind of where my mind is with it right now. But it's interesting that the word infinite was used, because I kind of refer to it as infinite intelligence. I'm also like you, where I, as a child, liked the idea of it being the most kind and friendly and loving grandpa you've ever seen. Because even I remember as a child, I always rejected the ideas that it was more judgmental or had moments of being schizophrenic. You know what I mean? That I'm going to wipe out this or wipe out that. But certainly a being within the infinite creator's ability, as Chris said, something distorted to have a more either controlling nature or something that had way more abilities than a regular human had, that would appear to be godlike in their abilities, could certainly have moments of schizoidism or tantrums or whatever, deciding they don't like how a planet looks at this current moment, don't like its inhabitants, so let's create a flood. So, but is that the infinite intelligence necessarily doing it? that's really not my personal belief system. So I do separate out the beings within it having an experiences versus the totality of the being. And I've adopted a little different visage of my own now of what God looks like. And Chris knows this because I watched, I think it was the first troll movie, the very first little cartoony trolls movie. And there was this cloud, just a little, one of the characters was a cloud. And that cloud didn't say too much, but it seemed to always be there when trouble was afoot. And it oftentimes, didn't understand what it was doing or understand what was going on. But in the end, it ended up being right there at the right place at the right time to do what needed to be done. And no one was threatened by this cloud. No one, felt anything, but it was right there at the right time. So since that moment, my visage of what the infinite creator or source looks like. And I'm like, it might as well be that little cloud, because it's something non-threatening. It's something that, you could pour your heart out to. It's something that seems to understand, but yet it's kind of neutral in a sense where it's letting you have your experience, not in a judgmental way, but just in a supportive way during your exploration. So really, honest to God, since that moment in time, my visions of that, infinite source creator has literally just been this friendly cloud that's around, which is funny because some people are always like that, black clouds all around. But that's not my viewpoint of that anymore. So I've changed, I've grown with my new, thought processes on it. But again, the one thing that has never changed is I do believe there's infinite support in the experience that we individually choose, and not in a judgmental way, you know what I mean, but in an explorative type of way. And I think, we saw the clip too, Katrina, and I think the one thing that was interesting to me that was said in the clip happened to do with what I'm saying. It's like everything is good. There's no judgment. If keep moving, meaning keep exploring, meaning keep having experiences.
Keep moving forward.
Right or wrong, but we're moving forward. Where it's not so good is when you decide to completely stagnate and do nothing, and you're kind of just hanging around for your body to die.
Right.
So a part of me feels this is such an important conversation to have right now, and today happens to be March 19th, 2022, is because of the situation that we all have found ourselves in these last few years, with being more isolated, with becoming maybe at times more afraid, more unsure. And a lot of our belief systems and foundational beliefs and things, that the core upon which we individually stand, it's like something's come in and just shaking it all apart, which is ultimately most likely for a good thing, even though it doesn't feel like it, right now.
Or what you could say looks like total destruction is actually rebirth and change. The phrase I was trying to come up with earlier was infinite diversity and infinite combinations. That's the phrase that came out of Star Trek. And that's essentially what this template is, where it's growth and rebirth and creating an infinite number of combinations. Yeah.
So people who pray, I do, it becomes very confusing. So I guess I prefer to pray to the grandfather sitting on the throne, because that is the thing that gives me comfort, that he's listening to every word I have to say. And in that belief system like that, I have found that the majority of the time, I've always gotten a correct answer. It might take a while, but I do get an answer. And sometimes it's not the answer I want. But as I've gotten older and time goes by, I realize unanswered prayers are usually the best of all, because they aren't any good for you. If you're, I think God has your best interest at heart. He wants you to succeed in life and to live a happy life. I don't think we're supposed to have a miserable life. If we do, I think it's something we agree to, or we just are maybe too lazy to get out of that. I'm not really sure.
Well, there's also targeting involved at times too, but at the same time, you have the ability to get yourself out of that as
Yeah.
well. So,
It's intuition. You have to feel what's coming through. You have to know on a different level that what's coming through is good or not good. And you can, if you listen real close and you open your heart, you can usually get rid of what you don't need to hear.
Well, in that clip it as well, I think one of the interesting things that is reflective of what we're talking here was a comment that she made that, she was very, very, very ill. Again, this was not a death experience, because the goal was she wasn't going to die, but it was just an experience of kind of not being completely to the other side, but not really being attached to the body, and having something going on kind of in between. But what was interesting about that was, she did mention, of course, right away recognizing that the sense of time was different. So a sense of time being in a body, having an earthly experience was different. But her experience that she was currently having was one of, again, a lot of darkness, a lot of expanse, a bit of confusion on her side. Because again, she wasn't dead. She wasn't crossed over to see everything completely at a different perspective. She was still somewhat attached, but she felt that she had been in this place for quite a long time comparatively to our time, like 10 years, you know what I mean? A long period of time, but it was mainly darkness that she was kind of floating in. Now, she wasn't terrified of it, more confused of it. But what happened to her, and again, I feel what I'm about to say truly applies to current present moment in our experiences. And I think she was still more attached to our experiences and that the way we have epiphanies than crossing over, was that she finally realized that the reason she was in this darkened area is because it's almost like a wall that she had now created herself to wall herself off from anything that could potentially harm her, because she had done the same thing in life. And so her current life situation, she had walled off people, she had kept distances, she had done all these things, due to circumstances in her life that led her to feel she needed to protect herself more. So she walled it off. Once that realization occurred, the walls broke down. So it's an interesting concept, because it's, again, one of the things that we've talked about. One of the biggest things is to open yourself up to the possibilities of other thoughts, other circumstances, other than what you've always known. Because, I think, again, in our belief systems and everything, we can wall ourselves off to keep it only within a certain framework. And we aren't necessarily allowing more in. Now, I'm not judging that, because there will be plenty of people who only like what they like within their realm of belief. Again, and I believe our whole journey is a spiritual journey, whether or not you recognize it or not is irrelevant. It's my belief system that everyone's on a spiritual journey. And at some point, that spiritual journey pushes you. There's an internal drive. And I think it is because we are infinite source creator ourselves, to learn more, to grow more, to consider more. And at first it can be frightening because it shakes your foundation. But if you let it occur, it actually makes you a bit more compassionate and understanding to other people. Because I'm like, Katrina, if you want to believe that God is going to be a grandpa figure sitting on this throne, who's there with ultimate wisdom, and he comforts you and he loves you and you feel so good about it, what's wrong with that vision? What's wrong with that image? I mean, like I said, I've adopted mine now to be this cloud, because that's non-threatening to anyone, no matter what religion you believe in. You know what I mean? It's so non-threatening, but so important, and oftentimes missed but is there whether you see it or not. You know what I mean? So I find, in my opinion, I feel fine with people making whatever kind of image they want that helps support them in their journey, because I don't feel we're at a place yet in our journey that we don't need that kind of support every now and then.
Well, the one thing I liked about the video, and it gave me some comfort, is, like I said, when I was a little girl, the book of life came out, the earth opened up, and I fell to what they claimed as hell. I don't believe in hell. And after seeing that video, I felt that even though I didn't like the real appearance of God, I did like the fact that he didn't care what she had done in her life that she considered bad, or she considered that she was going to go to hell for, or she was going to have repercussions for something she did in her life. The God in that video was not interested in that. He was only interested and wanted to compliment her or tell her that the fact that what she did from her heart, like she went into a grocery store and the lady in front of her didn't have money to pay for her groceries. And she was trying to put things back to be able to pay the bill. And she offered up the money for this lady, and she didn't think it mattered at all. But it's those little acts of kindness, those little things we do that we don't even think about as being good, or we don't care if anybody recognizes that we just open our heart and do something, is the things that please God. And that there is no hell and there is no repercussions for things that you did. Now, I guess if you were really awful, you might have to look at it and see, why did you do that? And how does it feel? If you hurt people, how does it feel to hurt? You might have to go live through that. But as far as the God she saw, it was compassionate and loving. And I always look at it the way when people talk about hell, as I say, are you a parent? Do you have children? And they'll go, yes. And I'll say, is there anything your child could do to make you abandon them or send them away? Oh no, there isn't. Well, why, if you call God in heaven your Father, why would you think he would do that to you? I don't think those things happen. I believe all of that has been written in by churches and by people that want power and control. But I do believe there's a lot of truth to the Bible, especially the ones that are very powerful that just don't go away. And they resonate to a lot of people. And so I think there's a lot of words and a lot of actions in the Bible that are true. The only thing that confuses me about having so many images of God, and that is, who are you really, if you pray, who are you praying to? I got confused when you guys called it source, because all my life it's been God. It's just, it was very confusing for a while, but now I think, well, it's more of a personal thing. It's more of what makes you peaceful with your God, or makes you peaceful within yourself, because when you have that image, you are just satisfying yourself, actually, to know you're saying, oh, please make this go away. You're kind of making yourself feel good because you've sent it off to somebody else to handle, because maybe you can't deal with it. And, it's just, it is confusing, but I keep on doing it, and I keep on believing that there is something higher than me. And there's a lot of details in life and in the Bible and in everything you read that are hard for me to agree with. I'm sure it's a lot as my age. And, but I feel I'm very open-minded because I have changed my whole philosophy in the last few years, but I still cling to the thing that I need in my life. Because if I thought I was here alone and I was never going to have anything the minute I die, then what is the purpose? There's got to be more purpose to life than just being here and then not being here.
Yeah, there. From what one of the things I was able to find out, there's interactions I have that, of course, you can see they're wholly alien, and then there's other ones that you can see that are complete spirit based, and and combinations in between. But well, from what I've seen, it's aspects or um, aspects of the person's soul, or what we call oversoul and interstellar counts and all that. It's where it's you looking at you, where it's like your greater library looking at you. And if you saw it in a certain distorted viewpoint, yeah, you could see that almost like a cloud in a way. It does kind of look almost that way. If you saw it backed up, if you looked away from it, you could see like this like almost like tree root, like cloud like thing. But when the artist Frank Frazetta came to us in the channeling one time. What happened was when he was here, he created what he created in his art, and then he took it back to the entirety of his oversoul, and his oversoul shifted and changed, and then reflected that of which he enjoyed down here. He created his own realm. He decided when he was going to come in as the oversoul and do this, do that particular mission. Whereas it forwarded the artistic community past that point where other artists now mimic that style. Well, where then it planted that seed in society at that particular moment in time. First, I thought it was going to be like an alien mission where they came in, planted like the Venusians do, plant like in the academic world and all this other stuff, like seeds there. But it was similar, but on a soul level. It was on a more spirit level. One could say also that's how Source learns more about itself by bringing back things that are learned here, brought back to the oversoul. Therefore, the entirety of creation benefits from that creation that happened here. People think it's the other way around, where it's this way, where creator is basically creating things over here and then applying it here. It's the flip side where it goes the other direction too. So and it expands the overall creation and over the overall idea of what creation is from here. And people think that's just Earth, but others are doing this too. Even though other species don't know how to do some of the same creative stuff we do, they're getting certain codes and certain things from us and certain ideas from us to expand their worlds. Therefore, yeah, not in a negative way. I'm not talking about the negative like genetic harvesting or anything like that. I'm talking about the positive energetic aspects of that. There's the negative side there that ends up altering things too, but then you have the positive aspect. Well, this is what I saw, that people that thought that they were speaking to God were speaking to themselves, and they were speaking to this oversoul themselves. Now, another negative being might try to slip in there and do kind of do this overlay thing, which happens a lot. But or some other beings try to put in like an etheric implant where that download is blocked and kind of fractalized and changed to somebody else's agenda. But overall, so oversoul is essentially what people that like that woman in the clip. What happened is there's a possibility where she was speaking to herself, and in that overall construct. Yeah.
That makes sense, to a point, because if God is all energy, if everything is energy from you to the table to whatever surrounds you, there you breathe, everything is energy. You do carry energy within your core. I mean, you are energy. It's the force within you. And so if you are, like I said a little bit earlier, even if you're praying, you're really praying for yourself and to yourself, because you are part of God. You're not, maybe you don't look exactly like God, but you do have his force and his ability within you to change almost anything you want. But I do think if there are things that you can't change, that God controls. I think if you had that power to do anything you wanted to do and create anything you wanted to do without anybody suppressing some of it, you have to have, I think, a higher being that comes in and says, that's not too smart of an idea. Let's not go down that path, or, let's rethink something. But you do have that connection to God. So him being all energy makes sense to me. But in my mind, I want him to look like a human. And I think most people do because that's what they've known. You know,
Well, it'd be no different, like Chris was saying, than if you were on another planet and you were humanoidish, but you look different than us, or everybody had, something, tentacles or whatever, then it probably would comfort them if the infinite creator looked more like them as a comfort level. I don't feel that there's anything wrong with that as far as where we are. And I think the good news is that you don't have to give up that belief system right now. I think that people will give up these belief systems. Let's say what if it's not true? What if this particular infinite creator has a particular look? That would shock everyone in every race. Okay.
True.
Why would an all-loving infinite creator do that? I don't think they would. I think that would only occur at the moment when you were ready and open to it, if it's even true, because I don't know if it's true. So I think, again, we go back to, my belief system. I think you share the same, Katrina, of truly this is a supportive, non-judgmental, all-loving. So why would there be so much shock and awe at probably the most fundamental of belief systems that most people have on this earth, whether they realize it or not, that there's probably something greater out there than just them here. I mean, there are some atheists, but I have to tell you, in my line of work, I've seen plenty of them decide towards the end that they're not sure what's going on, but it's not nothing. A lot of people who get to the end of life who relook at those thoughts and, change their mind, although they'll do it in a not knowing way, but they're not threatened. And that's what's cool about it. Something comes along to nudge even those people in a different way, a lot of them, where they know they don't know, but they know it's okay that they don't know, but they think there is more. And to me, that's greatly comforting. So I have no conflict whatsoever, because the one thing that, through our experiences so far that seems to be out there is no one infinitely knows. So no race knows. The spiritual journey continues, but no one knows the answer. And it continues and it continues. And again, we talk about we live in certain frequencies, and there's a lot of other frequencies. People call those that set space where you can visually see within it as an octave. And then if you're in a different octave, we can't perceive them yet, or whatever. I think Chris and yourself and just me a wee bit, are starting to be able to notice other octaves that are close to ours. And that's why we can see within them a little bit, but they look ghost-like normally. That it's just the journey that continues on. I would tell, honestly, it's the one thing that we've said since the beginning of our conversation. Do not give up a belief system that you are not ready to give up. Don't do it, because the goal is that you move and your foundation changes and your belief systems change as it is naturally ready to occur. You're ready to release something because you're going to explore to see if this is, potentially the way. And that the goal is, it doesn't put you in, cardiac arrest. I think what's hard right now in comparison to what's going on in the earth are a lot of people, their foundation. It is interesting to me, the foundation of everyone's belief system that's now being shook as to, certain things. But the one area, it's very interesting to me, the one area you can shake my belief system in my government. I always believed they were going to take care of me. Now I think they're out to kill me. Right. You know what I mean? You can shake that. But the one area that is still untouched is this religious spiritual side.
Well, actually, that's actually not totally 100% true. That's being shaken up on the fundamentals level as well. it needs to be shaken up because it shakes out all the things that don't belong in the moment.
Well,
That
it is,
side
but
needs to be
people
shaken.
don't know it. I'm talking about in the forefront of their minds. It's,
Okay.
no, I agree with you, Chris, because this is a spiritual journey. I completely agree. But I mean, what's being talked about, what's being, talked about on anything. If you go to any radio station where you don't really hear a lot of the spiritual journey conversation, except for those people with the belief system that there has to be an Armageddon to get to 1,000 years of peace. They're talking all over the place because, again, they believe those triggers have been pulled, and sorry, guys, part of us are going to die and all of this stuff is going to happen. But you know what? It needs to, in order to get us to those 1,000 years. So we're just going to have to put up with it. There's no other option in their mind what's potentially going on, that you and I refer to as certain oppressive things, right? It's not coming to the
and
forefront of their mind.
indoctrinative beliefs, and also that added to, say, a long time ago, people had those indoctrinated beliefs. It entered into the genetic code after a while. There was a spot where pre-Inquisition, where there were more pagan type people around, when they had to hide from the Inquisition, some of them had to become Christian in order to avoid, death. So what happened was those two belief systems, those two clashing sides, entered the genetic memory and the soul memory. And as that went along, it became almost like a virus in the system. And now that is also being shaken up now in the here and now, and it's all coming out in the open. And then you see even two opposing sides at times in belief systems, or several opposing sides that now have to kind of make peace, or something has to be extracted or rearranged in some fashion. And that's what the energies are doing. Sometimes, like what was said in the video, that positive or good isn't just good actions or bad actions. It's moving forward. So therefore, instead of a road of rose petals, it's a road of glass shards at time to get to the other end of it. Now that doesn't mean, again, that there's going to be an Armageddon to get to the peace. That doesn't automatically, it's not a prerequisite to say, okay, now it's this template. So that can be averted. That's a very nasty co-creative spell of the Cabal put in play a long time ago, or the bad aliens, the Orions, put in play a long time ago, to ensure that people always co-created a war or co-created a for and against or a bad thing. This section of Armageddon or fake alien invasion or whatever you want to call it doesn't belong here. That's one of those things that needs to be extracted. That's one of those indoctrinated beliefs.
I know there was one other thing in the video that got to me, is she finally just told God she was extremely angry with him, and why was if he was such a loving God, why did he put her through the challenges in life that she had to go through? And it was basically, everything has a purpose. In the long run, something comes out that makes it understood. But it's really hard to understand if there's goodness in all of us, if there's a God spark in all of us, that our core energy is God. You wonder how things like, say what's currently happening in Croatia. How can,
and Ukraine and Russia and all those,
how can somebody that has that God in them, how can they possibly do what they're doing?
Oh, you mean Russia and Ukraine and also,
I'm always saying Croatia. I meant, maybe that's his second place. I don't know. Ukraine. I meant Ukraine.
Yeah, it doesn't pass me that you say Croatia all the time, because I keep thinking, what does that mean? I don't think you're doing it.
Intuitively, you're probably picking up on something.
I know it's Ukraine, but for some reason, Croatia keeps coming up.
You're probably picking up on, like you said, the next target or whatever the next thing is.
Because they're not even spelled alike, they're not even close.
Well, I think one of the biggest, this is just now, of course, my opinion, to give a possible, I always say, let's throw everything up on the board, all the possibilities. So one of the, possibilities in my mind has always been that, I feel very strongly for humanity in this period of time. A lot of what has to happen is you have to know what's really going on in order to co-creatively change to what you want. So for me, I think when, again, we do not we do not watch the news all the time. We see little tidbits here or there. We actually make it a point because it can suck the life out of anybody. You can think you're a strong-souled person, but you know, they know what they're doing. And if you spend all your time and you're just watching that, it begins to affect you. And so if you want to stay away from being sucked into some of this, but trying to watch some things on the surface and get an idea of what's going on, I personally believe the biggest key to changing something is awareness of what is, so that you can make, you know, have a better understanding of what it is you do want to change. So in my perspective, what's happening, and now again, Ukraine is terrible, all these innocent people, I get it. But what's been happening around the world has not just been Russian. It's been government after government. It's been, you know, the United States. It's been Canada looking at those leaders. It's been, you know, China was well before that, looking at them, look at the people they're harming. And what was happening in general for the people of the world is then we would move to a different leader to basically say, okay, this is going to be the savior leader, or this is going to be the good guy, or this is going to be next. Okay, he's still a good guy, and he's still a good guy. And what's slowly been happening is that the curtains have been pulled back to see that it is a sad state of affairs, but it really doesn't look like many of these leaders at all give a rat's ass what happens to the average person and what they do and what harm they cause. So, you know, a lot of people were putting Putin on a pedestal, right, for a while. He's a good guy. He's a white hat, really. He's this, he's that. And what people are having to start to accept is that doesn't appear to be the case. And even though maybe part of you's hanging on so much like that kitten on the rope, that the tree branch here, the kitten, they're hanging, and you're like, I'm sure he's killing all these people and something magically good is getting ready to happen, right? Because you still don't want to let go of that thought process that maybe the world stage is not what it appears in all these places that you had built your foundational beliefs on. And then you'll change. So it seems to be whomever we seem to focus is the next good guy savior seems to be the next one that we're seeing who they really are.
Yeah, and I actually found out the current version of Putin is actually a plant at the moment, but there were two of them. There was one, and then now there's the what people thought was a good guy, but now there's a boogeyman. So yeah, you know. But
it seems to be happening more so to give people an idea of really what's going on. But you have to know, you know, and it's breaking down these fundamental belief systems, and everyone's, I call it shock and awe. Everyone's kind of in shock and awe. And then people are going to have to realize that they are co-creative beings and they have more power than they think to say, this is what I want in a world that I live, or this is not what I want in the world that, you know, that I live. And again, when you go back to, so you say, why would, you know, God do this? I don't know that God set the whole situation in motion. I think souls within him set the situation in motion. And many of us decided we wanted to get involved in the experience. And so, you know, again, we may only have ourselves to thank, you know, for being in some of this uncomfortableness. Now within it, I do believe in what we've always talked about, that this hasn't changed in me, that there is what's called the wash, rinse, and repeat cycle. And I think, you know, for those that they're on a side of they like to dominate and control, if they can keep people either, another word we use is cul-de-sac, or in a wash, rinse, and repeat cycle, the only way the person's ever going to get out of it is their personal growth. To see it just like the woman did, to shatter, right, what was holding her in it. You know, nothing shattered that for her. She shattered it herself with her epiphany, her recognition, her understanding. So, you know, I think that one of the unpopular things that, we may say every now and then is there is a bit of personal responsibility as to why you're in the situation that you're in. And the goal
Either through
is
soul or physical body.
yeah. And, you just have to kind of understand it better to then be able to control your own situation better. So I tend to believe that, again, we started really using the word source because we were starting to be around people that had different belief systems spiritually, rather than just more of a Christian where there were multiple gods, multiple. So, in order to be able to say something that even ties and binds that together, that's when we started using the word really as kind of source, because again, but in a lot of Christian belief systems with a monotheistic way of thinking, I think a lot of people like you, Katrina, even though you use the word God, I think you're thinking of exactly what we're thinking when we use the word source.
The being that's over everything.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so
the true creator, the one and only.
yes.
That is
yeah. So we just use separate terms, but it's really the same, I think.
I was just thinking as you were talking, so if we wanted to reach out to, say, Putin and change, do we go after the God within him or the God within ourselves?
This is both
Or
actually.
both,
So
maybe, yeah.
what you do is, years ago I tried to do this when I was on Diamonds. I tried to reach out to Putin's soul and saw there was a genuine being there. After a while, I did not see this. It was like more towards now. It was a comparison. I did not see this. It was more like, your oversoul is having to reach out to that being's oversoul, and that then you're talking on that level. And that's essentially what I was attempting to do, but it was more like the human was trying to reach out to that oversoul. So at that point, so what you do is you had to reach out within and say the rest of your overall oversoul library had to interact with his. And I came to find out that soul's path was to go from a flesh and blood human being to more of a synthetic type of being that had no light in the eyes and more of a darker persona. And that was part. One could argue it was part of the soul's mission, or it could have been how the soul mission was usurped and contorted here by the wills of others that came in here. The co-creative energy here twisted and contorted it into what it is now. You could argue that point as well. So I believe all of the above has taken place.
But you can't understand in this world, why people. I don't believe in Armageddon. I don't believe,
No.
I don't. Is there an antichrist? I think anybody that's doing evil is a form of an antichrist. But you can understand why people believe this, because if you look at the world, it's a for and against, love and hate. There is complete separation. It's just like the world split right down the middle. So I can understand if you've been taught that your whole life, that you are looking forward to that. You're looking forward to those 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And which is so stupid, because if you're doing that, you're not living your life. You're not.
Yeah.
You're
a slave to that narrative.
You're waiting for somebody to make you happy. You're waiting for somebody to change the world, when actually, if you truly believe in God and that God's within everything, you know that you have to take a part of that change. You have to help change it. You can't wait for somebody to take care of it for you.
Right.
And it's misread all the time. I mean, ever since I was little, I heard, I think that person's the Antichrist. I've heard that my whole life.
I hear that. I call some people that. So
but again, one of the things that we always look is pattern or strategies, way to control, way to dominate. So wouldn't you think it would be a great strategy to convince everybody that they're really only looking for one? I think it's a great strategy, because when people normally, so let's forget, Christ as a person. Most of the times, when you talk about the Christianity and the spiritual belief system, it's try to be Christ-like, and the qualities that we've now assigned as being like that, meaning do unto others. You know what I mean? If you don't have anything nice to say, try not to say it. Every now and then, not all the time, because Lord knows, somebody threw a table over, in a banker's place, but, to turn the other cheek, meaning decide what's truly important to fight about, things like that. And you think
Like
about,
what you say about, is this the hill you're going to die upon, sort of thing. Yeah.
right. I always say that, really
Yeah.
think, is this it? Is this the one you really want to make that stand on? And, and so basically to strive for qualities to be like that. So if you think what is anti-Christ-like, it would be people that are the antithesis, right, of those qualities. So, but the mind, I call it the mind whammy, the mind manipulation, is they have so busily have people looking for their one, instead of seeing it's a plethora. Choose which one you want, because right now what you're seeing is a whole plethora of people that truly do not care, and that do not care about the average person. And again, people are having to wake up to see that. They have to see this reality. So I do believe there is truth, in some of these, spiritual books and spiritual things that have been written, but also manipulations that are there that keep you on a path searching for something, and you completely can't see now because can only be one. Which one of them is it? Well, it looks like all of them right now.
Yeah. Now they're labeling Putin as the Antichrist, but I know in Walmart the other day, I think I saw a couple.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were. I just
every time we go there's at least 5 or 6 of them.
there's
So yeah.
Antichrist Walmart. But it's
But I will take to you, I want to bring this, if you don't mind, I want to bring up this one thing, because there was actually one section of that video that had me cringe a little bit. Just one.
Yeah,
and I want to bring it up for discussion, because I have to say, maybe the perspective coming from somebody who is way many octaves higher than me. Okay. But I'm talking about the octave I'm currently living in. So I didn't agree with what was said. And it had to do with an understanding of forgiveness. So, you remember that part, Katrina.
Yes.
And I'll let you, if you don't mind, I'll let you explain what was seen. But then I think it'd be really interesting for us to discuss it in the context of the octave and current present moment that we live.
Well, yeah, in it, she was waiting to be punished for all the bad things she did, and she wanted to be basically forgiven for those things. And God had already gone past that. He wasn't interested in that. But the thing that came out of it is that every time you think something negative about somebody, or you put out energy towards that person, maybe it's just a thought, but it comes with a great energy from you. Like, oh, I can't stand you. I'm being really nice to you, but you just drive me crazy. I don't like you at all. What they're saying is what was said in there is you're putting energy onto somebody like an attachment. And at the same time that you're attaching that negative thought or action to that person, you're also attaching it to yourself. So the best way to forgive that thought and forgive that person is to remove the attachment from the both of you. And so you don't really have to say, I forgive you, or they have to say, I forgive you. You just have to be aware of your mouth and your actions, and not plant that attachment onto somebody. Because if you're saying in your head, oh, that person's an idiot. Eventually, if you say that enough, is what the video said, was that you kind of make that person even more of an idiot. And so you have to cancel that and remove it in order. It's almost like a silent forgiveness or a revocation, you revoke it. But I don't know. I actually, it probably could be a whole show because I actually don't believe anybody that's really angry or been hurt. They might say, okay, I'll just walk away from you. But I don't think anybody usually ever really means I forgive you.
Yeah, and that's
That's
not
a
really
tough
a
thing to say.
requirement for that, yeah, can you send thought forms of people and attach stuff to them? Oh, yeah, I see that all the time. People do it to me constantly.
Yeah.
So it's like, but do I have to forgive the person just to make that stop? No. I go with the philosophy, Viking brought up, I just forgive myself for being stupid enough to actually have been associated with you in the first place, sort of thing. But at the same time, dropping the whole thing seems to cancel that out. Not necessarily forgiveness, just dropping it. And
But I actually, unless you truly believe that you did the wrong thing and you really want to make that person, part of your life again, and you forgive them for what they did to you.
mm-hmm.
But it has to be honest forgiveness, because I can tell you right now, there's tons of things in my life that if I said, oh, I forgive you, I'd just be lying. I don't think people, what I choose to do is if you've done something to me that I can't live with, I just walk away and let you live with your actions.
So I find that whole segment was so great because of the possible interpretations of what was being said. And for me, I find these conversations, when it gets like that, again, from that higher octave perspective, sure, we're energy. When we think of someone, we send energy their way. We did a whole show, Chris, the bad effects of good intentions. Mm-hmm. Same exact concept of the power that people have in their co-creative thoughts. Now, do we believe that it's every single little thought, like you're saying, Katrina? Absolutely not.
No, there's a filter in place that negates that. The intention, true intention, has to be behind it, and for a prolonged period.
And for a prolonged period of time. Mm-hmm. However, I disliked it because I felt that there was some out of context and out of skill level, higher perspective association that doesn't ground a statement like that into current present moment correctly. Because what if we all right now just decide to forgive Putin? Let's just do it. Do you think he's going to stop? Do you think all of a sudden that we created him into a monster and he's going to stop? He's going to turn around now and walk out of the Ukraine? Really? Because really, we were thinking of him as a monster before he did it. Before we did it, a lot of people thought he was a white hat, right? He's here to save, right? He's here to do all of this. Many people, you do have some that didn't, but many people had very positive thoughts about him. We weren't thinking of him as a monster before it started. We were thinking of him as a monster after multiple deaths. Okay. So it's kind of like, I find it an interesting concept because, we didn't create Putin with our collective thoughts. I don't believe so. I believe Putin is a soul who came in to have an experience, Chris, as you were saying, an experience that would change over time and his personality and things that were going on. And he started now coming forth with his new personality. And now we're thinking of him as a monster because he looks like a monster, right?
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that motivates collectively at a moment in time like this, again, when we talk about how is change made, well, I kind of believe the biggest torsion field wins. I do believe in those energetics. Okay. So if I were a very strong psychic person who could reach into people's energy and rearrange them, yes, I could be a very dangerous person. Do you see what I mean? Because that's when I could make them bad. We can't necessarily do that now, in my humble opinion, as people. Maybe some can, but not. They use psionic weapons for that now because the human isn't capable of controlling another human completely yet. I think.
Well, that's up for debate, but
Right.
well,
I get that, but I mean, it's, but for right now, I think I have a problem with that because I do believe it's one-sided out of context. And so if you think that I am going to forgive someone who hurt children, and for some people it'll be hurt animals and hurt children and hurt people, and in order to uncreate your monsterness, I take responsibility that I caused it, and I'm going to let go so that you won't be as bad as a monster. I reject the whole premise.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just am like, I feel that, and this is going to sound hard, God, if you're listening, I feel that sets people up to be a doormat in some cases. And I'm not willing to be that doormat. I'll wait a few more octaves and maybe I'll see something a little bit differently. But right now, in this current human present moment, I don't go around wishing people bad. I understand and understand that there are some people that are going to come in to have the monster experience. I can choose not to have anything to do with you, but to put the onus on myself as I'm creating you to be that way, I do reject that.
I do believe that collective energy about, say, the Antichrist. There's so many people that believe it and are searching for it. Yeah, do I think they could have created Putin? You bet I do.
Because, on a collective level.
Right, because they're searching with such passion for it because they need that 1,000 years of peace.
I could see that, yeah.
But they want the Bible to be true. They want it to be true, every word of it to be true. And they're searching for this Antichrist, and this Antichrist has to be evil, and it has to do the most horrible things in the world, and it has to crush people. And people are asking for that. I don't know whether they mean to create something as powerful as Putin is right now, but I do think they had a part in it.
But also this is part of the cabal narrative where they are reflecting back what people essentially asked for on that level. Now, did that soul, again, like you said, Joanna, both sides seem to be true to a certain extent in this. Whereas did that soul choose to come in? Yeah. One could also say it was forced in by other collective souls as well. But at the same time, yeah, I could see it was the cabal created this narrative decades ago. So I could see them aiming people's co-creative abilities to bring that about. But there was planning on the soul side, and there was also the collective consciousness of people that expected that. So
well, again, and once we have healed Putin of being the Antichrist, then when are we going to take on China's leader or Canada's leader or our leaders or whatever? Because there's plenty of them around. So that Antichrist that people have focused on has only been this many. One, right? And there is also a bigger picture going on, I think, Chris, as you're trying to bring about as well. And it goes to show, in my humble opinion, how co-creation is manipulated over time and has certainly been done through religious doctrine, where you've got that manipulative force that has been put within that. Although there certainly is enough spiritual goodness and truth, because none of us would have ever paid attention to it if we wouldn't have had that to first look at, right? So it's a very complicated, I think, little ball of yarn, and that's why this is why I didn't like it, because it tried to tone it down to something very simplistic. And again, I almost want to say a carrot and a stick, because you can be, and you have been, Katrina, think of how many times you've genuinely been kind and then have something shoved back in your face. So you didn't create those things. You didn't create some of these things. These things, were just there anyway. And, you can be just as good and loving as kind as anyone else, thinking that according to my vision and visit with God, if I'm, maybe my life will be easier. Well, no, you're going to see the monsters. You're going to see the monsters anyway. And I don't want to be, and again, it was one-sided because it only talked about a negative co-creation versus how to use something as a positive co-creation. It left that whole part out. And so that's what bothered me about that. I will say that did bother me, kind of stuck in my craw, that it was incomplete.
Right. And as you began, you said you'd never forgive Putin. Well, no, I don't think anybody should. I think that that is something that he'll never receive from the majority of, humanity.
Well, his actions won't. And I think you can sometimes separate, you're a soul, you were created by the source or God, just like I was. You happen to be one of the biggest jerks on this earth right now. Maybe, 150 years ago, I was the biggest jerk on this earth right now. You're having your experience in it. I respect the fact, because I believe I've experienced too, but I will never be okay with actions like that.
No, never.
Right. And so you should never. Maybe you've earned the right not to be here on this earth anymore. Maybe you need to come off the chessboard, or, maybe for the love of God, for most of these people, you never should be allowed to be in public service again. And I can bring up one other person to think about in poor New York. Do you guys in New York really want Andrew Cuomo back in a political position over people? Because now he's trying to make a comeback. And I think that's hilarious. But are people wise enough to see that maybe he should never be allowed?
Are they not wise enough? Because I've seen more and more comebacks in the last 2 years. I don't, I think people don't want to believe they made a mistake. They didn't make a mistake the first time, so they're going to vote him in the second time.
Oh yeah, people go with these patterns. And when you said Andrew Cuomo, I just heard Isaac say, "Yeah, he's a lounge singer on a cruise ship somewhere now."
Yeah, it's just wrong, But it's it's a complicated thing. This good and evil and God and not godlike. I used to question. I had a spiritual leader by the name of James Edward Smith. He was a medium and a healer. He was a beautiful soul. And I used to say, why? Why are there babies dying? Why are babies starving? Why are people being tortured? And I would be always so upset that, well, why didn't God do something? And he'd say, well, first off, you got to remember, God didn't create war, man did. Their energies created the war. God didn't. God sat back and thought, sorrow, but he let man continue on his path. And then he'd say, and as for those starving babies and all the horrible things going on in the world, does it break your heart? Yeah. Does it make you sob? Yes. And he says, well, then you know how good you are. And so when you see things you can't control or you can't handle, and you think, how could anybody do that? Just know that you could never do that. And just hold on to that kindness and that godlike part of you. So, it's hard to watch. And, I'm thousands of people want it to stop. They want him to get that goodness in him, but then he's not going to. Mm-hmm. But the fact that you want it to stop and the fact that you could never do anything like that, that's what is important.
Right. And putting out there in a co-creative way, this is not the type of world you want to be in or live in, and you're not going anywhere. I think it's important, to say, because I do believe some souls are choosing to exit. There's a lot, mm-hmm. A lot of people are passing now for all kinds of reasons. And, I think, it can become so hard and so crushing that a soul just says, I'm out of here. I do believe a soul has that power to do that. I think, again, it goes back and it always keeps on my mind. I never understood this statement, and I don't know if I really get it right now, but it just is in my mind, and it actually makes me want to throw up. That whole statement that the meek shall inherit the earth. And I thought, man, when that was written in, I swear that was a cabal little writer writing that in as the biggest joke right? Biggest joke, because,
Yeah.
you know, the only ones who are going to be hanging around here are the ones that we can really control and put under the thumb. And you really
Right.
are just going to
And
be
to
little
get to,
sheeple
and to get
walking
to God,
around.
you have to suffer. To get to God, you have to suffer.
Oh yeah, the self-flagellation.
Yeah.
whipping,
Yeah.
you know,
That's another one that bugs me.
yeah.
So I'm like, you know, my personal opinion is that if that's the truth, I'm out of here, because I have no
I've never been
interest
meek in my
in
life.
being the meek that inherit the earth. I can tell you that
No, the
right
strongest
now.
portion field inherits the earth. So
Yeah.
Right.
When I hear
And
meek,
so-
I think weak. I don't think, I think
Yeah.
it's somebody that has no say-so and is a victim.
Right.
And
doormat, pretty much.
yeah, doormat.
So
Yeah.
I do really believe that is a cabal, that it's a cabal agenda that's been written into religion to have you think that that's what has to be done. Well, that's what has to be done if they get control of this place.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what-
There are spots where, you know, you have to be more passive, and there's spots where the sword comes out. You just had, it's one of those where you have to choose the situation for which it's
The
warranted
right,
for.
the right choice of what you do at the right moment. But, you know, this might be me being very optimistic, but I do believe that mankind basically is good. I think what you see is a handful of idiots and, you know, based on evil, that have their own personal agendas and power and control. But I don't think it's the people. I don't think it's the majority of the people anywhere that want to die in a war or hurt their neighbor or see a baby die or an animal crushed. You know, nobody wants, the majority doesn't want that. And if that majority of people would put out as much energy as the small amount of people that are evil, how good everything would be. Because I do believe that goodness reigns. And it's just making people believe that, one, they're not a victim, that they can change something and they can do something.
Right. And they are God.
Yes.
And so, you know, instead of thinking you're not, or thinking everything is on the outside, if you really, again, when we started the lifting, when we started this in January of 2017, when we started to go and put this information out, not a one of us did it because we thought it was a hopeless situation. I think we can all agree that what you just said, and we've all agreed on that. And the goal was more of awareness of who you are, awareness of the capabilities that you have, awareness of what's really going on around you. Now, I will say, Katrina, that when we started this all those years ago, it seems now, none of us could have thunk what was going to happen in these last few years, even though we knew it. I keep saying we knew there were going to be these waves. We knew there were going to be these energies. We knew these things were happening, but come on. You know, number one, we didn't really know to the depth of what that means. And somewhere deep inside of us, we thought we were going to be exempt.
Yeah. I don't know whether, you know, I think we're survivors.
Yeah.
It's not like it was life and death stuff, but we're survivors. But I still think there's a spark inside of us that knows that we do have power, that we do have the ability to change bad things into good. And I really think that on a soul level, we know that life is not going to remain horrible. You have to, it's called hope. If you don't have hope, you don't have anything. You know, you might as well dig 6 feet deep and jump in it, because if you don't have hope, you have nothing. So in these last 2 years with all this COVID stuff, you know, yeah, a lot of people are still healing, and it's going to take a while for people to come out and trust again in any way whatsoever. Like we've talked, I said, most people feel like damaged goods, and they have to find themselves again, what they want to, if they have the ability to survive or become a total recluse. You know, you just have to take one step after another, get back out there and know, yeah, I survived this. So there's a reason I survived this. I must continue my life in the best way I know.
You know, and I, you know, even after all that's hit, us psychically, physically, all that other stuff, I still continue to do with what we initially set out to do, and you were saying, good always wins in this, and that one could view it like that. But one could say, as far as the overall motion forward, that includes both a mix of sides. And so one could view it as good always winning, or it's just as the path progresses, you can view it that way as well. Because it's as saying good always wins in the duality, that's not always necessarily true, but it's as a progression.
But on a personal level, I can say I plan on remaining good.
Oh yeah.
I in my own solidarity, I am going to remain good.
Yeah.
And no matter what anybody else does, they're not going to change me from being good.
Right. And something inside of you, as you were saying, or inside of me, or inside of Chris, sometimes when it feels like the avalanche of rocks has landed on you and you have a choice, am I going to lay there and just go? Right? Or somehow inside of us, we pick ourselves up, we push the rocks off, we dust ourselves off. We have varying degrees and varying lengths of time that we self-soothe and eat a lot of ice cream or whatever our passion is at the moment to self-soothe. But somehow here we are today. Somehow here we are, not giving up, doing it again. And I think again, this is where I say, not just for us, but for everyone out there, you have to understand you should be patting yourself on the back. Because this isn't little what everyone's been put through. I don't care whether you know anybody who's passed from COVID or not. You are naive to think that what has happened over the past few years hasn't affected you. There's not a soul on this earth that hasn't been affected by the collective and by what has been transpiring on this earth. And so everyone's been affected. Everyone has at times wanted to curl up and just go. And for some reason, we still have some sort of drive to keep going. So the question is that God? Is that the, self, that piece of source, or that piece of something within us that keeps us wanting to still expand and grow and have experience? And in that sense, with the video, I agree upon that is good. And you know what I mean? When you keep going and you keep expanding and you keep moving forward. And in that sense, all of us can pat ourselves on the back. And I literally mean that for everyone that's listening. If you're listening to this, I hope you pat yourself on the back. You are way more than you think you are. And you do have an internal GPS system hooked to something very amazing, be it your higher self and then the infinite creator after that, that really is there and is overarching, your best friend, you know what I mean, looking out for you.
Yeah, because God is, he's compassion and he's unconditional love, but he's also survival and hope. He's all of those things. So,
and all the things that exist in creation itself. Yeah,
exactly. So if you have that inside of you and you know that and you use it, you can't help but win.
And using that part of creation, because you are creation at that point, no matter what side of you you're essentially using. But for the betterment of what's going on now, utilize more the benevolent side. Or as you said one time, Joanna, going into more of the dark end of the spectrum is more like less light, or less, less, how can I put it? Less, yeah, that's how I want to put it. Less seeing less of a person's energy, more of a disconnect versus the interior of the person. So yeah, that's why I was trying to get at.
Yeah. And again, we've never said, and Chris and I probably will never say, you oftentimes to grow have to have a contrast. There has to be a contrast there. because again, we could just sit and lay down and not do anything and stay where we are, but there is this internal GPS for growth. So there will be rubs, there will be things, but the question is, again, do the rubs always have to be a head-on collision instead of just a speed bump? So, the goal is in that exploration of, of everything, seeing everything for how it is, choosing to have a co-creative process that just, again, I have always said this on the news. You don't like something on the news, they're making it believe it's going to go down this way. My first response is, no, it's not. Because I said so, right? So people need to have that internal approach of ownership to what's being said. Do you want this in the existence that you're having? And just that little bit, I keep going back. They made a movie of it. I cannot think of the name of the movie now. A few years back, there was, and I can't even remember which country it was. I don't know if it was the Philippines or if it was one of those other countries around there. Again, they'd have rainy seasons and this, that, and the other. But these boys, and I think I'm guessing, again, please forgive me if I butcher this. It's the context I want you to get, not the specifics. So I believe they were, in a little sporting match of something, and they were participating, but they also were going to go cave exploring. And these kids with their, coaches went into this cave, and then some rains came and they got trapped.
Oh, yeah.
Then it was due for the rainy season. And in a normal rainy season, those caves would fill up. These kids would die. They would all drown, okay? This made news around the world. I think everyone who heard this story around the world said no. And you know what happened? The rains magically stopped and they did not come, and those kids were rescued. It was amazement because they should have been there. This stuff was, looking like it was going to happen, and it stopped. Everyone wants to give credit that was a God intervention. And I keep saying, no. I mean, yes, but no, it was a humanity intervention, a collective consciousness that rose up from the people that were on this world that said, no, this will not occur. We reject it. No, I cannot handle these boys. It's not going to happen. And it didn't happen. They've made a movie about it now, and I don't know what their spin on it is going to be, honestly. But I keep bringing it up over and over again as a positive example. And I do think, again, Chris, this is one thing you and I talked about, looking for more positive examples of how co-creations with a mass consciousness like of our Earth, a positive event occurs. And own it. Don't say it was an external force when it probably was us. Own it, to understand the power, for the power that we have within us to help something good be achieved for a collective. And to me, that's one of the finest examples that's happened in the last, I think it was in the last 5 years or so that it occurred, and it's never left me. You remember it, Katrina, don't you?
I remember. I think it was the Philippines, so if I remember right.
Yeah, there was a cave that flooded, and nobody could, those kids couldn't get out of there, and the rains kept making it higher and higher and higher, and they had to get them out of there. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So, nothing is a catastrophe unless you allow it to. And if God and the God within you have the same intention, you can perform miracles.
Mm-hmm. And if that side of you is something that side of you is something you own, it's what you don't own is the junk that you don't need right now. What you do own is exactly that type of behavior, more of the unified behavior. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is where, we talked about, just experience in general. We always would say, we as a group, as humans, when we think about Armageddon bad, we've already gone down the toilet of experience. We've already been there. We've already done it. We've already gone down. This expression and experience is so much older than what people can even pretend to imagine, really. And we've already done it as souls. Now our right is to learn about it, come out of it, make different choices, to go into, again, we call it the unity and love. That's a great example of what I was just talking about. It doesn't mean we become zombies of one another. It doesn't mean we become all one. It doesn't mean any of that. We're individual souls, though, that have the ability to co-create with collective energies to do amazing things if we want. And so I think that I agree with you, Katrina, I said it earlier that, I'm actually the optimist like you do, but we have to break down what isn't working for us and see it in order to turn it into something as a collective human experience that we want. And that's the hard times I think that we're going through. I don't believe that the torsion field of folks that are loving their life of domination and control are done. I really do feel they're to the last breath. And, I feel that it's just going to be, again, who we are from the fall to the lifting. I think it's going to be, again, this process of learning. I think we've said this before, again, not so popular. It's not going to happen in an instance and a poof. It's not going to happen that way. We have a right to learn how to do it. And so we're learning slowly how to do it and how to uncover it and how to see it. So, instead of just being there, who wouldn't want to just be to the other side? But that does nothing for our journey in learning if we don't learn how to see it, how to grow through it, how to make it happen. We have to go through all those processes. And, the infinite creator, source, or if you call God, probably already knows that, we have the right and we should experience the whole journey, not just be at the end, because this part of it is a wee bit painful. And it is.
And so the image of God doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter at all. All you have to know is that there is something greater than you and that you're not in it alone.
Mm-hmm. And at times it's you looking at you, and you have to discern whether it's you or something benevolent and creative. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is a great place to stop.
Mm-hmm.
I hope for those who listen to this, it really will give you certain perspectives, open up your thought process to what you think in general. I don't think I'll ever change my mind personally, that I believe strongly that this is a spiritual journey. I think it's good to know that there is something more and greater than yourself. I do not think the spiritual journey ends, although maybe religious doctrine that we feel was not necessarily for our highest good may go aside as time goes on. The spiritual journey, I think, will always go on. It is the area, I think, of the utmost importance that people need to look at to reground themselves in a stronger foundation, to be able to move forward through some of this in a healthier way for themselves. So I really hope this show and the other ones that we do here on True You, that, you find, thought-provoking and, again, something to think about. If you have any comments or you have any suggestions of things you'd like for us to talk about, please email us. Chris, where do you want them to email us at?
You can email us at thelifting 2017@gmail.com. I would like to thank everybody for subscribing to this subscription platform, and also the Patreon by which you are seeing this video currently. But we are in the process of building a much more expanded platform by the time you are seeing this particular video. So thank you, everybody, for your support and for the subscription and for watching this new episode of True You. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. And welcome to another episode of True You. Today, which happens to be the 14th of April, 2022, we're going to talk about the concept of thoughts. mainly, are all your thoughts yours and what we think about that. And so we want to thank you guys for joining us, for listening to these discussions. And we hope it gives you a lot to think about in your own lives. And of course, we always look forward to your feedback or your suggestions of topics that we can just chat about. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Katrina.
I heard a show the other day and somebody was speaking, and I can't even remember what it was, but it triggered a thought in me that this person said that they didn't have control of their thoughts, that things that came through to them were coming through from other people and they were compelled to say them. And I thought, well, that's not right. You always have a choice of what you want to repeat or say if it's coming through. But it made me think about how many times are our words not our words or thoughts, and that they're coming through from guides or muses or family or friends that are trying to guide us into the right direction or get us to say something that they want us to say with maybe possibly an agenda. And so, to me, like if you're compelled to, say you're sitting around, you don't have anything to do, and all of a sudden you're compelled to paint, or you're compelled to write, or anything creative, that's usually a muse, I think, that comes through for a short period of time just to guide you into a creative section of your life, and you may never know who it was or even be aware that it came through, but all of a sudden you're painting or you're writing. And guides, a lot of people feel they're guides for life. I don't believe that. I also think guides change as you evolve. And the more you evolve, the more that guide, you don't need that guide anymore. But that doesn't mean another guide doesn't step in. And it doesn't also mean that a guide is somebody you've never met or has been assigned to you. It could be somebody that's passed over, like a family member or a good friend that's coming through to make sure that you're safe or you don't get hurt. Or it's always it's kind of like I used to come home late at night from a group back at home in Nebraska. And I'd get to an intersection and I'd always hear, go straight. No, go left. And sometimes I didn't listen to that voice and I would go the direction I wanted to go. And there was always circumstances that I shouldn't have been there, like a car following me or a deer crossing the road. So, I mean, it's important that you listen to those voices, but you also have to be intuitive enough to know if they're giving you poor information. And you learn that pretty fast. If you listen to it and it goes haywire, you know that maybe you got to be a little more selective of what you do and what you follow.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. With our material, over the years, there's just been some things that I know now probably should not have been put out based on what certain beings were giving me, and what should be out, what overshadows one thing, what shouldn't be overshadowed. And I do this also with my little recordings too. Like I will hear. Like I'll have an idea where it expands on something else, and I add them to other shows and stuff like that. Well, sometimes it's too much, and sometimes too much of those downloads come through, and I'll be like, enough, done. At that point. But then as Isaac explained to me one time, there's like a certain muscle that in the download or the telepathy or something that starts to get stronger, like lifting weights, essentially. And you have to know when to tone it back and when to activate it. Essentially, you don't have to have it on 24/7. It can be balanced and integrated. And also with your thoughts, knowing whether they're yours or not. I've had one client after another essentially tell me, my thoughts are just doing some strange things. I was like, no, your thoughts aren't doing strange things. Somebody's putting it in your head. And 9 times out of 10, it was something mischievous or dark, trying to get them to do something stupid. And it was I've run into that multiple times. I've also had the compulsion, and I laugh when I say this because, you know, like if I'm walking through the neighborhood, for a while when we first moved here, there was this really strong thought in my head to pick up the trash in the neighborhood. Came to find out later, it was the tree fae pointing at all the garbage in the neighborhood, demanding it be picked up. So it was the little tree fae that live in all the trees and such in the neighborhood. They're pointing at it like, when will you be picking that up? And eventually, you know, I figured out it was them doing it. Now, also, if somebody is telepathically communicating with you, it can at first sound like it's in your own voice in your head. And when you start to acclimate to that frequency that they're communicating on, you start to attune to it. You'll soon hear it in their voice after a while. It depends on the person. You know, they may be hearing strange thoughts in their head from day one and not know that it's not them because it's in their voice. Their brain may never become attuned to the other being's voice. It may be just an idea or a thought, like a inspiration or like to turn left or to turn right. You know, it could be something like that. There's aliens out there that will help people out if they feel that they're going like down a dark alley or going to get hurt or something like that. They'll put a thought in their head and say, "Hey, don't go this way or don't go that way." And it could be your own higher self or oversoul saying the same thing. It could be that. Now there's some that do the opposite. They'll tell you to go jump off a cliff. You know, like in what you would always tell me in Sedona. You know, you would go there and hear. You were always warned about don't listen to all the voices you hear out there. And yeah, that's what I hear continuously. I'm hearing opposing voices. There could be beings arguing with each other, and they're trying to get you to do something too. You just have to be discerning and be intuitive
Kind of
enough.
takes practice is what it does. It's like singing. If you don't sing for a while, then you can't sing as well. You have to practice. So being intuitive is a practice too. You
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to know the difference and have certain clues that come through or certain signs that come through so you know who you're really speaking to. And
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes you just are compelled to do something and you automatically do it and it was the right thing to do, but it might not have had anything to do with you at all. It was just somebody kind of pushing you in the right direction because they knew if you followed that wrong path that you were going to get hurt or you're going to look stupid or you're going to make a big mistake you're going to regret.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. I've run into that multiple times. Like when I start to record something, like on a particular topic or something. Like every now and again, we'll get a warning. Hey, don't post that yet, or
Mhm.
don't go there at this particular time, or something like that. Just wait a minute, you know,
Yeah.
because what was their concern was that we would get canceled again. So they were basically some of the good ones were saying, hey, just hold off a second or wait a second. And then I had to go more with my intuition as to whether that was the correct move. And it ended up being, I tested that a couple of times just to see if that was true or
Yeah.
not. And it ended up getting wrong attention. So yeah, it's more on an intuitive level. You know, also when you have thoughts in your head and you have like a strange thought, you can always think back to it and say, who do I have with me? And if you keep getting the strange thought, you have a telepathic contact that isn't you. I've run into that multiple times where I'll get some weird voice to skull artificial intelligence thing in there. That's another thing in play that falls under the malicious or demonic category. But that's our AI, government AI, and and you get thoughts put in your head to maybe you act in a certain way or walk out in the traffic or you know even in some harsher cases some people rob banks because of it, commit crimes, they do all this other stuff. But then you have the positive end of the spectrum where you have beings that show up to bring inspiration or creativity as well, including aspects of your oversoul or aspects of your soul family too. So that I've seen both equally, both.
I've seen it work through me, like in emails. I'll be angry about something and I'll sit down and I'll just type it out. And I learned a long time ago that that's not always me doing that. And I just file it away and come back the next day and look at it. And I would say most times after you reread something you weren't sure about, it was because it really wasn't you. And you start looking at it, you end up either, oh, that sounds really good, I'll go ahead and send it, or I better delete that. That was really a dumb thing type and I would really regret it. You know, working on the spur of the moment is not the way to go. You know, you have to uh, use some common sense before you do stuff that can change your life. You know, so I've learned a long time ago that I can be one person one day and another person another day in my thoughts. And that's why this interested me so much, is that I realize that it isn't always me. And that is why you make some stupid mistakes in life, because it ends up harming you, and you look stupid. So it's best to just kind of be very patient with yourself, reread, rethink before you act. And then if you still feel it's good, then go forward with it.
Yeah, and also with depressive thoughts that are out there. That's a lot of these energies out there. There's energetic influences, not just thoughts on that level. It could influence you into sad, angry, depressed, and also other people's thought forms can influence what you even look at, what you buy, what you say. You know, if you're sensitive enough to it. I think it was you that mentioned one time. I cannot remember who mentioned this about when they were standing in a line at McDonald's, and they were all of a sudden they were thinking about a particular order, something they weren't going to order, and it ended up being the person in front of them that had ordered that thing, and they were picking up on that guy was hungry and he wanted to order something.
Yeah, you pick up on thoughts around you too, and they become your thoughts. What do you think, Joanna, of the whole thing?
Well, I think, I'd like to talk about the actual human side of all of this, because this happens a lot where certain dominating humans with their thoughts put their thoughts so strongly out there and onto other people that other people start adopting their thoughts that actually aren't theirs, but they're adopting the thoughts of somebody else. So this happens, I think, a lot where in trauma and different things where you have, for example, and it works on both sides, and I'm going to use a child that maybe went through either a single perceived molestation, okay, or a pattern of it. So first you have things that actually can happen, a truly innocent event where maybe, a grandpa or an uncle is helping a small little girl to the bathroom. Somebody misinterprets what they see. It's very innocent. God forbid it be a parent or somebody, and truly it was innocent, but maybe the mother or the father had gone through a molestation and their mind is going to something that happened to them. And they over years talk about it and imprint onto then the child a scenario that did not occur, that the child adopts as fact. It then starts a domino effect of behavior of, how this child interacts in the world, how the child interacts with the supposed person who did it. And that may have been something truly of innocence. But when a story potentially is repeated over and over and over and over and over again, that it may become factual in a mind as a true thought, even though really probably the child doesn't, and or as they grew, don't even remember the incident. Now that's different from the opposite of that, which is about basically splitting intentionally a person's mind when they are put through abusive situations, but are told that there's nothing wrong with it, that everything's fine. So a child or somebody could be then fighting internally, knowing that this doesn't seem right or knowing whatever. But then because you have these parental type figures around you that you have to trust for survival, in a sense, that you start then adapting some of that thought process as being normal and being okay. But if there is a division inside of you, it will divide you, and in some intentions that's intentional. I bring that up specifically that has been happening, and now there is again a huge issue going on in this country regarding discussion of gender identity and which age is age appropriate. the word grooming is being thrown out there because there is a huge concern, and rightly so, of potential grooming and doing what I would consider the second half of this to, to children in different ones, and then even dividing them from their parents to allow, the healthcare system within a school system to help divide a child, from their parents. And many are saying, of course, that the children, basically are too young to make these types of decisions, that even if they have these gender identity discussions, they really don't understand. And it takes, the development of it through the years to actually understand. So, and I will bring up something that came up that is interesting. There is a pretty famous person, and I forgot her name, who was transgender herself. She's a psychologist, and she's really known for helping those in the country that are younger, teenagers or whatever, in this particular process, and is very interested. She's one of the ones big time putting up the red flag with this because of the increase in numbers. And, her belief system is in no way is this actually possible, but that potentially, things are being misconstrued by the adults, accidentally or intentionally. Right. And so that there is a big concern. So that is how a truth, can be, your thoughts really aren't your own. You're not left alone long enough to be able to develop them. You may say something and not know. And then you're convinced of a whole nother area to look at that, could potentially become your truth. And, could cause some huge problems psychologically also down the road. As much as people say there's psychological damage for not embracing who you are as soon as you know it, the fact of the matter is it seems that children are in no way capable of knowing it at that level. And it then may send a child down an even more destructive path, to set them up later for all this conflict inside. Now, again, human on human, if things are repeated over and over and over again, the human psyche tends to accept that as fact. I think now the big review that's going on, even again, we all, know there's a lot of political theater, but the political theater plus the mainstream media, plus all of this, people are rightly so discussing, does this all seem to be a cahoots plan? Because I think one of the most interesting things that happened, and I think, Katrina, I didn't say I was going to say this, but I think it's a good example. If you don't mind, I want to bring up, I do want to bring up Trump and Biden, and I do want to bring up the videos that you were seeing versus what we were seeing. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I want to use this as an example because, we're not in the same home. We don't live together. We're not necessarily using the same source of information. And what was happening towards, when it was becoming election time or even before that, I must say that I am a registered independent, always have been, but I've also known that I don't want to get involved in some of this anyway, because I know it's theater. But I did watch some things, and I would say, and I've always said this, I didn't care for some of the way that, Trump talked or anything like that. I'd never invite him to dinner, right? I really wouldn't. However, when we would talk a little bit about it and Katrina would talk about it, her viewpoint was much stronger in a direction that I couldn't figure out how whatever she was watching was leading to that strong of a conclusion. And I'll let you talk about it if you want to a little bit, Katrina, because it became truth because it was the only thing being seen.
Yeah, it was a basically a censored view of reality on both ends of the spectrum, and well, both sides are showing their viewpoint. And I've even seen this later in the evening on both sides. You know, on the news where they will say something that's more gravitating towards children, and then you have the other side doing the same, and they're both saying their viewpoint. One side saying the other each is programming children with their viewpoint, but both are doing it. So and both are doing that form of
They're both
indoctrinating.
editing it. They're editing each other so that
They're editing each other. Yeah.
whoever's watching whoever, they're not getting the true what they really said.
Yeah, both sides are essentially editing each other
Mhm.
out of the equation. Well, they're so biased that they won't even entertain a conversation from the other end. So, sometimes it's closer to the center where they do, but the extreme ends of it are the ones doing the thought influencing, and these are the guys here you don't want. Right here, you want the ones that are more moderate. You're in the center, and this when Joanna, when you started talking, I heard Isaac go and canceled like that when you started talking about
Right,
like
exactly.
that. But what was being brought up was the cancel culture as a form of censoring thought and censoring what people look at, and therefore you're making people impressionable to only one viewpoint or one way of doing things, and that people that are kids that are developing see this and they're going, oh, okay, this is the way to be, very much like almost like a Nazi and indoctrinative policy. The same thing with like the whole critical race theory, where they try to get you to hate another race for their color. That whites are supposed to hate themselves because their ancestors did something. No, you don't do something like that. You have to let people develop things on their own, and not have those impressionable thoughts, on their people around them. Of course, you're going to influence people, but and teach people, but that's slightly different than forcing a particular set of programming on somebody. It's a totally different methodology.
Well, television is good for that because it's such repetition. It goes over and over and over. And I'm not just talking about the news. It's if you watch any kind of police drama or crime drama or just anything anymore, there's always something just a little bit that they want to bring out as controversial just to either get ratings or they think they're helping you. But when you let's just take the molestation. If you keep seeing shows, not even in late hours, but in prime time, that are talking about molestation or transgender or any of this stuff over and over, I know that it has triggered things in me. So I can't imagine that it doesn't trigger things in children who sometimes will keep looking at something and think, why is this upsetting me so much? This must have happened to me. I mean, this might be an exception to the rule, but if you all of a sudden you start relating to it and it upsets you very much, you start thinking, well, I wonder what happened in my past, or I wonder if this was what happened to me the other day. If you have a child mind that's trying to figure out who they are, and it just goes over and over. Sometimes those triggers are real. Sometimes they are bringing up stuff that, you've hidden for a long time. But most of it just upsets you that these things happen. And that emotion is just anger or sadness for people that it's happening to.
Oh, you muted yourself. Sorry.
Or they're judged by people that don't know anything about you. And it's just, I don't know. I think the media the news isn't just the problem. I think television programs, because they're bringing up, if it's not controversial, they don't want to do it. There's always something said or done even in a sitcom that comes up that makes you have to think about how you feel about a subject. You can't just laugh anymore. You have to think about how you feel about Blacks, gays, religion, everything. And nobody always wants to think about those things, but it's almost like a pressure to people anymore that you almost have to think about it, that you're almost commanded to think about how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether you feel that way too, but television
Mm-hmm.
is getting just a little bit
Oh
odd.
yeah, yeah. It is. One thing we saw on, I believe it was Gutfield last night, where he was saying that, or was it the night before? I can't remember which one. Where they were talking about the whole transgender movement at the moment, and saying it's like the in thing now. Like, oh, you're not cool if you don't do this, and that's something that somebody would not have thought about before. But now that dysphoria is like being impressioned on those people as like a cool in thing. And one thing, I was laughing about that he said where he showed all these people that were talking about this in a picture. He goes, "Why do they always have crazy eyes?" Like the and I looked at, it, I was like, "Well, I'll be damned, yeah, they do." He goes, "There's a clue there," but it's like what I was laughing because I saw this. I'm going, "I'll be damned, I didn't notice this before," because he put it all next to each other, and that's what I always encourage people to do: take the information and put them side by side from different sources, and it's the same thing. Like from television. And what one of the things I ran into, this was probably, I would have to say I want to say it was 2020 or 2019. I can't remember which year it was. There was someone talk about thought impression. This was more in the line of alien abduction, mind you, but this was this was still thought induced by somebody. So there was this person, this model that I had photographed, and this person was never had any real thoughts of like any sort of dysphoric thoughts or anything like that of wanting to become a boy or anything like that. All of a sudden it just flipped, it just changed. And this person all of a sudden was going to get the surgery, went to go become a boy. I'm thinking, wait a minute, something changed here. Either this person was replaced or there was a heavy thought inducement. It ended up being that. Uh, and because I ended up looking in this person's timeline and saw a glitch where there was a program put into the person, and then all of a sudden they changed. Their personality changed, and all it took was some aliens messing around, and they became something else. And then I realized this was part of that agenda to put all these confused, dysphoric people out there to completely wipe away people's identity altogether, and to not make them grounded and not grounded in their thoughts and in who they were anymore. And knowing that that was the basis of a real person, was to be grounded in who and what they were, regardless of what it was. But the transgender thing has to be a legit thing. If there truly is a true thing, or anything of the sort, it has to be the real person and not some weaponized thought form that they've put out there. And that's essentially what's been taking place, is weaponized thought forms on television, TV shows, everything like that. When I started looking back, I saw a distinct difference between a real transgender and this person. And there was a complete night and day uh, difference. And this is also what's going on with some of the younger people that are being influenced. Either it's from a telepathic thought form from some alien or governmental source, or it's just from pure pressure from other people being around them going, hey, this is the in thing. So that's where that's evolved too. It evolved from the other thing to this. And that's just all these thought forms that have been put out there. And there's so many thought forms out there. It's just unbelievable what you pick up on. There's one I wanted to mention that goes back to when I was living in Tempe, when we had a roommate who was really shifty. And Isaac, I'm not going to say it. Okay. He was going to say something about that, but he's been yammering in the background to get me to slip and say stuff. But it's just like somebody trying to get somebody to miscount by going 3, 26, 12. He's been doing this crap in the background. But that's an example of thoughts being screwed with. But this person, while this person was at our house, and I didn't know this until this person had left, where there was just these really deep, dark, like suicidal thoughts, like addicted thoughts, all this other stuff that was going on. And even though there were hauntings and stuff in the house that were also doing things of that nature. We found out the house was severely haunted. That can do it too, because it's the thoughts and imprints of others that had died and the ghosts that were around, both imprint type and interactive. But this was this particular individual that was pumping out a lot of this because he himself was being susceptible to that paranormal activity that was around. He was the more susceptible than anybody in the house. And I was like the second most, apparently. He was the broadcaster, I was the receiver, apparently. Or he was the bigger receiver, receiving the paranormal activities thoughts, and then I was picking up on it by proxy, essentially. I was getting all these thoughts, and then the day he left the house became calm. And when he was officially not there anymore, like literally renounced, position in the house, it was totally and completely calm. And so people pick up things from other people. They don't realize also empathic transference from ghost occurrences. I always say this a lot. People are repeating what the moment of death of a ghost, and they may end up in their own death, and it keeps building that cycle over and over again. And that thought form can build and mutate out of control after a while. And that's why I do a lot of clearings and such, so that not only the negative entities that want to feed off of that, like loosh off of it, but to make sure those cycles don't constantly repeat and mutate over and over again. And these things go on for centuries. These things could be centuries old. It could also be in your genetic lineage too. Viking, and I call this viruses in the DNA, where you're picking up tendencies from an ancestor, or past life, or both, if the two were one thing. And you're picking this up through the lineage, and you're picking up traits that aren't your own, but they belonged to a father, grandfather, great-grandfather, something like that, or great-grandmother, any of those. And you could be picking up the traits from their past lives too. You could be picking up opposing sides of their own lineages and their own soul lineages, because the past life memory goes into the genetic memory. It kind of downloads into the genetic memory. So you're picking up all those. So you have to weed out what isn't. You have to be firm in who you are, so that you're not radiating something you're not, that's from ancestry or from past lives, or not mirroring something in the here and now.
But here's the way I feel. Maybe there's been transgenders and all that for many, many years. I'm not an expert.
That's past life. Yeah, past life stuff too.
But what I've always felt is it's evolution.
Mm-hmm.
It's evolution, not so much that you're taking it from family members, but that there's an evolution to balance the world, to balance the universe, that you're not so masculine or so feminine that you're becoming the same, both. And I think it's coming out and it's hard to accept from some people. But I don't think it's all in the head, or it's not all voices coming through. And there are things like that, but I think the majority of them are people that they don't understand it any more than anybody else. But it is an evolution where, as more generations come through, you're going to see more and more people that are both, and that they're balanced. They're trying to balance the universe and not try to upset them, and maybe they don't even know what's going on. They know that they have to go down that path because it could be their purpose.
Mm-hmm. It could be their mission.
A lot of it is, just to make just to balance the male and the masculine, because we have a very bad habit of not being able to do that in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people can balance. And, so I don't know. I think that I'm always accepting all of that, because I know there has to be a reason for it. Maybe it was because it was never talked about, and it was very serious ramifications from it. But I do think that more and more and more people are saying, yes, I am this, and I'm proud to be this. I bet you're going to see more and more balance coming in that way.
It's because also that's what also the viruses in the DNA, as I was saying before, things are being balanced that way as well. And also where non-weaponized versions of all of these things are coming in to rebalance the scales. Versus the weaponized. I've seen both. Even in the secret space program, there was body transfer stuff that the military did to cause dysphoric. When they wiped the person's memory and sent them back, they didn't know which gender they were. They did in their mind. That was pure weaponization right there. The natural forms of it would be the past lives, where you had certain number of certain number of like male or female lifetimes, and that could mean average to an average of you're both here, or one or the other here. It could balance out that way. And I've noticed that
it could be an assignment.
Yeah, an assignment, exactly.
This is why you're coming through. This is why you were born. Help out in an area, and it's not just about what gender you are. It's about everything. Because usually the feminine side is passive, and the male side is considered aggressive, and so it comes down to emotions and your whole chemistry built. Your emotions, your chemistry, your the way you look at life altogether. So I think that's coming into balance too. And so, it's just everybody should have both sides in them. It should never be one side or the other.
Yeah, everybody really is anyway. And also for missions and assignments, people that come in to do this could even come through the weaponized form of it just to bring balance to that side and eradicate that form of it as well.
Exactly. What do you think, Joanna?
Well, I think, the vast majority of people on this planet, minus maybe certain parts that I feel are experiencing things maybe in what I would consider a different time. There are areas of the planets that I think I would not want to live in, that they really are a throwback maybe to medieval times. But, in general, most people around the world, I think, look at themselves as a defining character, as trying to be kind and considerate. And so in that sense, I think most people, in general, whether they understand it or not, are supportive with people that are struggling with their own thoughts, that are struggling with, is it this, is it that? I think where my big concern is, and it always has been, is when you have those people that can be very strong influencers, or a group of people that can be a very strong influencing force, that their goal is weaponizing the ability to control people's thoughts. And so again, I'm talking about current human ways where they know that in general, what I said is about people in general wanting to be kind, caring, understanding is true. But then they know they can make it an Achilles heel for that person, so that they're always doing so much self-reflection of, I don't know what to say to this person. I want to make sure it's right. I don't want them to misinterpret me. And they have flipped that good quality on its head, and they control it in a way. And so, people are also, in a sense, the regular people are going to need to get more factual information and understand that these types of groups to influence exist. They do try to manipulate the masses. I think an interesting poll was done not too long ago, again, where, the discussion of how many transgender people do you think are in the United States? What's the percentage? People were going, oh, it must be 30%. Well, it was less than 1. Okay, so all of this discussion about all the rights on such a small subset. Again, when you think about the racial issues and Blacks, and they need to be in half the jobs. Well, it can't be done when you're only 13% of the population. So so they'll take good qualities that people have, and then they flip it on its head. Because one of the other qualities that good people have is they want to believe, and up until this point they have believed, now they're questioning it, is that, you know, the people that are, you know, running things have their best interest at heart. Now they're realizing that corporations are out of control, that they really don't. And, you know, and neither do some of these people in the government. And so now people are having to reflect, re-look at, almost like we say, deny the known, right? Deny the known and re-look at everything. And is that really what I believe? Which takes them back to, what is the foundational basics of your belief system? How do you want this world to run? How do you want interactions to be? Do you still agree with your old thought that you want interactions to be truthful and authentic? I think a lot of people assumed it was, and so now they're being shook up because now they're finding out that wasn't true. And so they're having to review, did I rely on them to give me my thought because I was trusting that they were, but they're not? So all of this chaos that's kind of going on right now, which not a single person on this earth, basically, minus the tribes that are living on their own somewhere that aren't paying attention to any of this, everyone is literally affected by this. And so it would make sense that if you're suffering from a depression, if you're suffering from a, man, this world's crazy, I don't even know if I want to be here. If you're suffering from some of these thoughts, that may genuinely be you, because this is a chaotic soup that we're in, where you're having to reflect. But then you have these influencing types of groups, either human or, you know, etherical, right? Or other groups out there, because you're starting a thought process like that, will jump on the bandwagon and make it 50,000 times worse. So all of these things, you know, again, are really going on. I think there certainly are opportunistic moments where something is done that may end up truly helping to awake people to some of this and make them think about it more. I wonder, you know, myself, that maybe the slap heard around the world was one of those moments where people have to truly reflect of, is this okay or not okay? What in the world just happened? Was that real? Was that not real? What in the world were the thoughts going through his head? What would the thoughts be going through my head? What is it related to? You know, and I've said this before, what would you know, I don't have children around, but if I were watching that with my children, which, believe it or not, in the heyday when I did have, you know, children around, we would watch these award shows. We would watch the Oscars together, the Grammys together. We would watch all these things. Now, you know, my children, you know, are, you know, pretty independent now. And I sit and I go, oh my God, if I were a parent with children, would I even be watching them anymore? Number one. And number two, what would I have done in that moment when that occurred? You know what I mean? And so, you know, here's Will Smith, the greatest guy, slapping people around. Well, then, you know, Johnny's mad tomorrow at school. He's going to slap Joey around, right? Do you see what I mean? I mean, I think, you know, sometimes, as complicated and confusing as an event occurs, it actually can be done to help awaken people to really have to look inside to what is their belief system and what they want and they don't want. Because believe me, any person who thought that Will Smith was the greatest person in the world, and especially if you're young and vulnerable, feels you're empowered to go slap somebody on someone else's behalf now, right? That's how they're influenced.
Yeah, that chivalrous type of attitude where you have to avenge this person's honor sort of thing. Yeah.
Right. And where did Will Smith get that? Apparently a lifetime of thinking that's who he was, I guess. But again, a moment where parents have to intercede, right? A decent parents would have to intercede in some sort of conversation, you know, with the children. So I don't know, I do believe good things can come out of unfortunate events.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, I kind of feel that may have been one of them.
What I felt at first was shock and why they didn't do something about it. But also, I think that there's something wrong with Will. I think that something in I don't think it had anything to do with his wife. I think it had something to do with his childhood. I think something was said that triggered. It might have been his wife rolling her eyes that reminded him of something in his family. And why you would put your whole career and everything by walking up there and slapping this man, and then knowing right afterwards, as he got home and everything, why did I do that? I mean, I think we can't cancel him. I think we need to help him. Because I think this cancel society doesn't look at both sides. Yeah, he was really wrong. I mean, that was a horrible thing to see. And you got to teach people that's not something you do. And if you do it, you better take a good look inside you and figure out why you thought that was appropriate behavior. But I do think that there's something wrong. And I think that instead of canceling him, I think we need to figure out what would ever possess somebody at that level that has always been a good guy that would do something to jeopardize an outstanding career. I don't know, I might be wrong, but I just think that we all do things that later we think, oh my God, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Why was my action that way? And then we have to take a good look at ourselves of what made us do that? What caused us and triggered us to do something like that? So I would like to think that they're not going to cancel him. I would like to think that they're going to maybe help him.
Yeah, in that, I also did see some influence that was around him too, but the bad guys need something to grab on to as well. Mm-hmm. So they could have taken something that was like, wait, this, and made it this, and it was like that in several of my own situations where, I'll hear a voice echoing in my head from somewhere like, do this, do that, or if it's like a really strong telepathic field, that they're trying to grab on something that I might have hidden somewhere, even somewhere in my file cabinet, somewhere from even some other existence somewhere they're trying to pull off of. This was more human on this expressional level with him, but with myself, they seem to grab like things from God knows where. And like I always tell people about that incident in Vegas with the guy at the bus there, where I was gonna start yelling at this guy, and then I heard this voice in my head say, look left, and everybody had their cell phones up like this. I was being baited, like I believe Will Smith was being baited. So, it was something like that.
It might have been something that really needed to happen. Mm-hmm. One, to make people understand this isn't good behavior, and it shocked most of the world. And anybody thinking that's okay needs help. But I'm going to bring up something you said earlier about look at the eyes. Mm-hmm. You go back and look at that tape of Will Smith sitting in the audience. His eyes were different than normal. They were extremely dark, and he wasn't blinking. I don't know how long they kept it on him, but I noticed that right before that, he was smiling and kind of laughing at the joke. Yeah. And his wife rolled her eyes, and his eyes got really dark, and he went up there, pulled his hand back, and I think he thought for a minute, no, but then all of a sudden, wham. And so I think who you are and or not so much who you are, but what you're going to do or the emotion you're in always shows in your eyes. Your eyes are a telltale. It's just like, say you, Chris, when you get really angry, your eyes turn black. When my eyes can change from gray to blue, depending on how I'm feeling, whether I'm feeling bad or whether I'm feeling happy or healthy or not healthy. Your eyes change. And I think you can look in people's eyes and kind of get an idea of where they're at sometimes. And maybe somebody that, they didn't know it was going to happen. But I think if there had been somebody there that looked at his eyes, they might have stopped him. I thought that this was just, and I didn't think that at first, but I saw it so many times. And they zoomed in on TMZ on his face right before he went up, and his eyes changed completely. And if you look at, like, say, serial killers, they'll put their pictures up. They all have the same eyes. They're all dead.
Mm-hmm.
There's no emotion. There's no compassion. There's nothing there. They just exist.
And some of these world leaders, a Viking and I called them dead eyes too, where like Trudeau or Putin or any of them, where they have the dead eye look.
Right.
They could be being controlled to shift over to that too. Like with Will Smith, it seemed like it was really quick, and that was like a control flip of a switch like that. And I've seen this in people. Some people that have been abducted in the programs have that happen quite often, but it's. But you'll see it flip back and forth where the empathy will turn off, and then you see this, or you have like a typical narcissist or Bundy type of people that are always that. They were never good. And it was,
they were inborn sociopaths.
Inborn sociopaths.
Yeah, they're born in that way.
They have no emotion. They don't have any. They could be setting a kitten on fire and they wouldn't have any emotion. Those kind of people, and those kind of people we should take more time to recognize, because they have obvious traits right from the beginning, but no, it's just, it's scary. Well, like you said, Putin, he used to have a sparkle in his eye. They're dead.
Yeah, I noticed that. And he was replaced, from what I was told. He was totally replaced. And
you see it in some of our leaders too. The eyes are dead, or there's no twinkle. There's no, you can tell when somebody's usually good. I mean, people fool you. There's always people that fool you, but you can tell if somebody is somebody you want to walk up to and talk to. You can tell if it's somebody you want to invite into your life. It's just, but those people don't have any of that. They don't have, I'm here to help you. I'm going to change the world. And your life's going to be better now because I'm here. And when you look at that person and you see eyes that are dead and they don't ever look at anybody directly on, they just look to the side of that person's face, you got to question who they are and what they're going to do with your life.
Yeah, I've noticed that there, that there are soulless beings out there. Moses and I were on the whole the vampire discussion not too long ago, and we took note that those beings have no souls, and they're essentially a true monster, and their eyes were exactly like that. Whereas whether they're energetic or whether they're an actual, that, it was viral. It was a viral contagion, but it was something that separated the soul out of the body and kept the memories intact, but took the soul light away. And we notice that it goes into something very complicated that doesn't fit here. But I'm just saying this portion of the discussion, where you even said a friend of yours saw on a military base, saw somebody that had that was had no soul. And I looked into that person and saw they had nothing. And I even saw a teenager, that a being had grabbed the soul light out of the person. And the mother was now afraid of this person, saying that her son was like Ted Bundy. I'm not saying everybody is that way. There are circumstances where that happens. And then there's circumstances like Will Smith, where there was like a control mechanism turned on and they did that,
Or he literally snapped.
He snapped,
It was just like all these things, maybe all his life had been building up to that one moment, and it just took maybe the roll of her eyes. It might have triggered something from his past, or something that, that he didn't know was even messing with him. And all of a sudden he snapped, and then he came back and he was still angry. But then all of a sudden you watched him in the audience, he melted, if that's a good word.
Yeah.
I watched him just kind of like, what the hell did I just do?
Yeah, and that's why I believe there was a control mechanism in place. So there's it's Hollywood. There's some demonic forces at play there too, like always. But also when we get what can be played off of is, like you said, something was passed. That's what Viking and I call the viruses in the DNA, where you're trying to get rid of the traits that don't serve. Well, obviously there was something in his file cabinet there that hadn't been dealt with, even in immediate. And then something was able to take advantage of that, and then
And he
so
could have been just extremely egotistic at that moment, that he thought he was able to get away with anything.
mhm.
You know,
Well, in that sense, I would say again, in his life, there's been grooming to have that thought process of being able to cross the line, and it's okay. I mean, put in some of these positions that people are put into where they are, in a sense, allowed to do things, get away with things, say things, not necessarily always publicly. I mean, privately as well, where there kind of is a grooming of a persona. Right. So in Will Smith, there's no doubt in my mind that, there was a sense of entitlement that had been groomed within him, whether he even realizes it now or not. I'm sure he's reflecting. I do feel he's reflecting on
I do
this.
too, yeah.
But I do believe that people can be groomed with a sense of entitlement, that all kinds of things can happen, you know what I mean? And but again, I feel there's a great struggle going on of maybe him having to reflect on everything, every thought from every person that has come his way. And he's now, as I always say, in that tangle ball of mess, that he's having to pull the threads out to find himself. He's got to find really who I am. And again, he's just another example of other people who have, grown up with these and been groomed in certain ways to have certain thoughts that maybe, if this influencing wasn't around, they wouldn't have naturally developed that way, let's say, if left to their own devices.
Nature and nurture argument. Yeah.
Right. Which I feel, again, is a big discussion, of course, as far as the protection of children. You know what I mean? When you have people that are famous that couldn't find themselves until after they were 50 years old, right? Why would you expect a 5-year-old or a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old? I mean, it's completely ludicrous. Like as was what was being said last night when we were watching something, and it's very true. You don't allow children to drink alcohol because it will mess with their minds and their development, right? So there's all of these different true acknowledgement that it takes 25 years for a brain to grow, to develop, to get the final understandings to be a fully developed brain. And the last thing to develop is, your sense of understanding other people and having that greater understanding and empathy of the whole, which again, then why would you expect a younger male who decided to, very sports oriented, decided he was going to transition? Why would you expect someone at that age to be caring about the world as a whole, right? And only caring about the awards they're winning for their athletic abilities. He's not the model of a mature adult. He is a child still with a brain that is not fully formed. And thus now, again, this overwhelming sense of it's all about me, right? We're putting up on the camera younger people that it's all about me, and this isn't even fully developed, thinking somehow that's representative of society when it is not. No. It is representative of a brain that isn't fully formed, acting age appropriate to a brain that isn't fully formed. And so, I always joke, I said it with Chris, as far as thoughts, I don't care. I don't care what you want to be. I do not care about your preference and gender identity. I do not care. And I can tell you, I agree. I think, people used to refer to this as a bisexual, or some days you felt more male, some days you felt more female, and this, that, and the other. But now you get into this pronoun thing, and I'm like, you know what? I am really sorry. My telepathy doesn't work. I do not know what side of the bed you have woken up on, and how dare you, in a world that we want to be civil, think that it is okay that I'm expected to know where you are every second of the day. So it is not civil to be having such an unrealistic expectations, because nobody has telepathy yet to be able to know how to address you, basically in whatever way. And then as a child who's so self-absorbed because they haven't developed for it fully, they're taking such offense. And we're supposed to actually, care and make that the norm versus grow up. And you're going to see this from a little bit different perspective. No, I will reject your premise that this should be the norm. You haven't even grown up all of the way. Take a little bit more time. Let me teach you a little bit more. But but somehow that growing up process and what it literally takes for the brain to develop properly has been thrown out the window, I believe, intentionally to cause more chaos. You know what I mean? To cause all of this division within self, division within people as a whole. And, it needs to be recognized and then obviously reined back in. And I do believe people are coming to the point of seeing it because it's glaring in your face, how different thoughts that may not be yours at all are so crammed in your face that you may be taking something on that you should never take on. But people have to choose to become more educated on subjects themselves, rather than relying on people and pundits that are put in place to confuse you intentionally and or take advantage of good qualities of you, to have you running in a circle and being a bit sociopathic, I would say, with their behaviors. But it's starting to be noticed, I think.
Yeah. Well, I know I have a friend that, I have several friends that are gay, and every one of them will say they knew that was something different, but they didn't know what. And most of them were adults, and I mean far into adulthood, before they figured out who they are. And I have one friend that says, I'm still figuring it out. And they're almost as old as me. So, it's something that is a battle within these kids, because they don't understand. But if they're watching television and they're listening on the social media and all that, they are being possibly persuaded to be something maybe they're not. And, so, I mean, instead of, forcing all these different names and different agendas and genders down people's throat and down children's throat, just let them figure it out on their own. They will. It's whether it's gender, or whether it's your preference in food, or if it's your preference in anything in life. It takes you years to figure out who you really are and what really gives you any kind of joy in any arena, and that's the whole idea of growing up. You figure out who you are and what you should be doing, and something you don't like about yourself, you start to change, and the things you like about yourself, you try to feed on, so it's just any child's not going to figure out who they are, not at a young age. And that's why we don't let them drive until they're 16. That's why they can't drink till they're 21. I mean, it's all a matter of growing up, and they're still going to make mistakes, and they're still going to do things wrong and be influenced by friends and TV and parents. But eventually you come into your own and you figure out who you really are. At that point, then you make those decisions. Yes, I'm gay. Yes, I'm transgender. I know this. I can do something about it. I don't need anybody's help. I'll just empower myself to be who I really am. And that's with everybody. It doesn't mean if you're gay or transgender or heterosexual, it makes no difference. You have to come into your own at a certain age and know who you really are. And you do not have to announce it to the world. You just live your life the way you want to live it.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's like a true situation. Yes, you got to know who you are, and this also applied to another situation that came up in a session one time, where the 17-year-old was calling herself by a male name, and then the mother was she goes, I wouldn't care if this was a legitimate case. I would not care at all, and because this daughter was going, oh, you just don't get me. You don't, you're against all this. And then the mother turned to me and said, no, I'm not that way at all. This came out of the blue, and something's making her think that this has been all along, like with this other person I was speaking about. And what had happened was there was an infiltration that took place. I removed it, and she went back to being the person who she was truly was, but she couldn't, part of her psyche couldn't tell the difference between telepathic and intrusive influences in her body to try to get her to change. There was even a viral contagion involved in like the etherics and in the body that was affecting the mind as well. I came to find that out, and once I was able to burn that out, she went back to who she really was, and then she thanked me and said, "I have no idea why I was thinking this way." She even brought up, she goes, "I wonder how many people my age or younger are influenced by these same outside unknown sources, and now are thoroughly dysphoric or confused." And she could tell immediately it was different between regular the transgender and gay and all that, the regular, the good side of it versus the influence weaponized. And she could tell immediately the difference. And because she's actually, I believe, a gay female, and she could tell the difference between what the real thing was and what the weaponized thing was. And that's apparently what part of her mission was here all along, was to recognize the difference and go, wait a minute, there's a huge difference here. And then those energetics went through the etherics around other people, and now that will help others find out the same thing.
We also got to remember a lot of things, not even just as children, but as adults, a lot of things are done for attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And,
oh yeah, the first the mother thought that was what was being done, but then she realized real quick there was something.
Yeah, and there's some people that need the attention on them at all times, and so they'll do anything to get it. But but as a child, I know a lot of things are done for attention. How can I upset my mom and dad? How can I be a rebel? How can I, and so you got to put that into the equation too. There's all different facets there. It just, but it's a thing, and I think the thing that does it basically is the news and social media. I personally feel better when I'm not on it.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed the same. I use it because I have to use it for certain things, but I notice if I stay away from it, it's different. Yeah.
If you're not reading every single thing that comes through and you're just looking at cute puppy videos or something, that's one thing that can lift you up. But if you say something or you post something and someone just, rips you apart, that changes your whole mood, and so if you're a child and you're just learning to what you believe and what you want in life, and somebody takes something that means a lot to you and rips it apart, that causes damage. The bullying is way out of line, and it's and I think you know, I see these kids walking to school sometimes, and every one of them's on their phone. They don't even watch as they go across the street. They're just staring at their phone the whole time. They can take them to school now, you know, and then they wonder why they're on them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, I think it's letting everybody else think for you, and you just figure what would I like it to be, or what would I want my life to be, and then you feed into that. If that makes any sense. I mean, you know, all your friends think this one thing, and you really don't, but you go ahead and think that way simply because it makes you cool, or it makes you safe and free of bullying.
Yeah, I had that happen too when I was back in grade school, uh, where others, you know, would bully me, and then I eventually bullied someone else. So it kind of went down the line. Something I regretted because that particular kid ended up killing himself later on, and I came to find out later in life that's what had taken place. And then I was thinking, oh, that influence sent ripples and waves, very much like you see the Will Smith thing where it sent ripples and waves in another direction. This sent ripples and waves in a totally different direction. It's something similar, but whereas people are influenced to become part of that in crowd when they were never meant to be in that in crowd to begin with, you know, and then by me seeing that, I was able to break away from that totally and completely, which is what was supposed to happen all along. But like I feel there was like a cycle, like maybe a karmic cycle or something that was supposed to complete in there that ended up doing so. But in that respect, that's how much those thoughts and energies can influence someone else. They think that's the in crowd is the thing to be in, and that's the total opposite of that. And the same goes with all the influence transgender stuff and everything in schools and everything. They're trying to turn that into the new in crowd versus just the bullying, but it's bullying fused with this in a more of a condescending or this is the cool thing to do sort of way now. And that's the pattern I've been seeing popping up.
You also got to remember you really are a product of your environment when you're younger. And well, Will Smith, since we were talking about him, he was abused. He saw his mother abused. Okay, so he saw that, so he buries it. You know, and then, you know, you don't know what triggers that or makes him think in his mind that that's okay to do. And that's the way it is, you know, with bullying. Like you said, they bullied you, so you became a bully. It's that way with everything. You know, if your parents fought all the time and they never tried to communicate, you know, do you have that skill, or do you really try to learn it, or do you bury what happened and then have it triggered somewhere in your life? So you don't know what's going through people's mind or what's stored in there. And when that last piece of information goes into your brain, that makes you snap. You know, so it's serious. And words and actions, they're important, and they have just as much power. Thoughts, words, and actions to me are equal. What you're thinking is just as powerful as what you say and what you do. And if you put it out there, you know, if you're thinking something about somebody and you think it hard enough, it can almost become an attachment to that other person.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be, you know, when you say something that's not like you or you shouldn't have said, and you know it immediately, you know, just reach out and grab it back or cancel it, revoke it, because it's not what and who you are. It's just that you had that moment in time that you said or did something you regret.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You know, just like with that incident with Will Smith or any other for anybody else's situations, you know, where it could be major influence that's taking place, and then you know immediately that's not who you are at that particular point. Could be demonic, could be AI, could be old inner demons, you know, things of that nature, or all of the above, and also the like what you were saying, Joanna, the vocals that people use can influence the energies around the words and all that. You know, some of the things that have been coming through. This goes back to other channelings that done. There's a group of giants that I've dealt with that are more like wizards, and they compare themselves to, like Gandalf the Grey and Saruman the White, all those that type of group, or like in the Elder Scrolls series where they use the voice or the Thu'um to change things, or even fight at times where they can use magic that way. Well, the way that this group operates is certain spells said in their language are from Atlantis, so they use the original Atlantean tongue that spread out and created different languages. And even power languages like, say, Latin or some of the Slavic or Scandinavian languages and things of that nature. What they were saying was, yes, you could literally transform an entire environment with a single word or syllable. So even though that came up in my book years ago from a different group, this still held true to now. They're saying different vibrations will come out as different words. This is why different beings want to hijack that, since they can't do it themselves. They want to take us as a creator being and try to spew out their energy feces basically all over the place. And so you have to be very careful not to fall into that, or you end up transforming something forever. Again, it goes back to the whole slap thing where he spoke and actions and energies were all the same, where then it sent a ripple and wave out that changed his career and whole dynamic forever, and the environment forever. But I think that's also one of the reasons on a soul level this happened, was because it was supposed to bring to light other things that were going on in that area, like Hollywood and awards and all this other stuff. I wanted to basically bring up some of the underbelly that was in that society and environment too. I believe that's another area why that happened too.
So was what he did a good or bad thing?
Both. It was on both ends of the spectrum, where it made changes where appropriate, but it also had its negative side of the sword too. It was a double-edged sword, but overall, it may have done an ultimate good to show some of the things that are brewing in the background too.
Right, exactly. And getting people help.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's just it's very controversial. I'm sure neither one of their lives are going to be the same.
No. They even showed in a video we were looking at where Chris Rock was going to actually strike back, but you could see he was thinking about it and going, "Oh, there's consequences to this. I'm going to step back a minute." And you could see
that's an example of somebody that's worked on themselves, because I know he grew up in a very violent neighborhood and was beaten up and beat up other people. And he's said he's worked years to become more passive and not, go into that trigger ever. Mm-hmm. And so, he's worked on himself. It's Will that needs to work on himself.
Yeah. And that's a reflection of what people need to do. Yeah.
He has to recognize his behavior in himself.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And then he accepted it and just let him go down the toilet instead of him, so, you got to admire that, because that shows real growth in Chris Rock,
mm-hmm.
And he did a classy thing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and just kept going regardless of what was going on.
And kept everything on mark and kept the show going, and but I'm sure that it was it Wanda Sykes said on Ellen's show. She said, I was sick to my stomach when it happened, and I couldn't understand why they didn't take him out of there, because she said I had this line I wanted to come back when he announced that he was the actor of the year, and say, "I'm sorry, Will couldn't be here tonight to accept his award because he had already been removed." And so it's and that's what should have happened. It should have been shown right there that this you're not going to be rewarded for what you just did. You're going to be removed, and so everybody else can feel maybe safe. How do you know what he was going to do next? If you're capable of doing that during a live show that goes through millions of homes and different countries, then you're capable of almost anything at that point.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I just hope they all rectify this somehow, and move on, and
then of course
supposed to come out of this will be taught.
Yeah, and also, of course, the cabal took this and ran with it and turned it into and tried to contort it and morph it like they usually do. And that's why you never want to become a your own induced kind of false flag where they can grab it and use it. Yeah, you know, they will. They'll exploit the hell out of it. So
Every
yeah.
meme in the world's hitting the internet, you know. Now it's that slap picture, you know. Like Batman, did you ever see that one where Batman slapping Robin? And it goes on and on and on. Well, now it's going to be Will Smith and Chris Rock.
Well, somebody even made a meme saying that, where it's like, okay, finally we can phase out the Batman Robin slap meme with the Will Smith Chris Rock one now.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that Batman one is good.
That one's priceless. That one's priceless.
Stay and play, because every time I see it come through, I laugh.
Oh, yeah, I saw it just the other day being used, but they put the actors' faces on the two of them now. So it's like I saw that yesterday. I saw a version of that way too. So
it's good.
Yeah. So Joanna, did you have anything else? Maybe this is a good place
really,
to start.
I think it's good time to kind of wrap this up to give people a lot of a lot to think about. So if you haven't reached the conclusion yet, I think the three of us are resounding yes, that your thoughts can be influenced in a way by all kinds of manners, let's say, and that it really may not be reflective of who you are. So throughout all these years, since the beginning of 2017, when we started this journey, we always have said that this is an internal journey to really get to know who you are, to know what you're not, and especially in this area of thoughts. And then again, the goal is to learn better co-creative skills to bring into your life and put out those energies of what you want things to be like, how you want the world to be, the interactions, authenticity and trustworthiness, and all of these different qualities to be able to change the world into something better that, is more reflective of an experience that you want. So that's my final thoughts. Do you guys have any?
No, I think I've said it all.
Yeah, same here. So we can just end this here. So thank you everybody for watching this episode of True You, and we'll be back for more here soon. So bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I will do the accompanying galactic channeling because of the fact that we want to line this up to be a lifting episode. And not True You associated. So when you see thoughts, that's what that is associated with. So I will do that one shortly as well. So who is going to do the channeling for this particular episode? Of course, Isaac. And then we'll do have either you do the next one, or we're Lena Bessa, Forest People. Anybody for that one? I believe it's only invested for the other one. So, okay, we will go into this. So, through the crystal. Yes, hello. This is Isaac. Yes, the question is, what is God? Now, through the centuries, a lot of beings were called God, not all of them nice. Enlil, for instance, was called the God of the Israelites. He was also called Lucifer, Loki, Jesus, Yahweh, all of these things with the aspects and all in between. Now, that is the satanic God. The real God, the true benevolent source creator, is neutral in all things and is in and around all things. There is a source energy that passes through each and everything, essentially the Force from Star Wars. Neutral, but there is no universal law, does not govern universal laws. The laws of nature and true benevolent source creator are interwoven. Nature is that intermediary by which then the multiverse is governed, and also the big yard Goodrill tree is governed. There are other forces out there, such as your Time Core, your Orions, all these that came from other expressions. But what is God in all of this? Have they posed as God? Yes. Have they had a God complex like Time Corp? Yes, they have. But there's a difference between what is called God and what has a God complex and what really is God. True benevolent source creator is the encompassing energies. They always say God is love. Yes. But is also all the evils in the world also God? Yes. Is there that intermediary by which then Enlil played that expressional role? Absolutely yes. For source learning about itself and expanding. Do they seek to help him get out of his vampiric stage? Yes. That is not the conversation. That was just pegging what the dark Christian God and all of that was from the Old Testament. True benevolent source creator encompasses all things, including even the universe the Orions came from, including the multiverse, including all expressional choices, patterns, expressional values, sound and light tone values, all of these things, and time and space. And yes, time does exist, but it also everything is everywhere is happening all at once. Now, the neutrality part of this, this is why they always say, him and Joanna always say, true benevolent source creator, then you are tapping into those particular energies. But then you have the capacity of all these within you. The God within you, or the true benevolent source creator within you, is constantly creating and constantly learning and constantly finding what is overage, what isn't, what is time, what is not, what is multiverse, what isn't, what is dimension, what is not. What is the space you should claim? What is the space you should not claim? What are the choices made in each and every second, moment, and nanosecond of existence? With all this said, as he likes to say, infinite diversity and infinite combinations based on Spock's quotation. I also don't always recommend that you look into other universes, but you know what I'm saying. This is also where I will add in the other episode, the accompanying thoughts. This can always be added in as the episode of both. Thoughts, you always hear thoughts are things. Thoughts are creation, but it's the energies and the intuition that is the soul that drives the thoughts. That you have the thoughts that can manifest and create, but people attribute this to only the mind. You have the open heart space, you have the intuition, and you have the mind. The mind has to be manifest, the thoughts written down, such as he's always said it on the manifestation list of what you want and desire. And then this expresses the heart's interest and grounds this in what you call the I am presence of the better parts of the oversoul and the better parts of the avatar. The thoughts are things when you believe and know they are things. People always say, as soon as you think them or say them, you're conjuring them. That is not always a certainty. You must put the intention towards it, but if you believe that it is going to be that quick, it is. Some people's filters are shorter, very much like Moon Knight, the character. He can manifest his own personalities in a split second, or there is a time-delayed fuse, let's say. It is tough to say which is which for each individual person, but the gross mean average of the whole thing is there must be an extreme intention towards. This will eventually change as the human filter goes slowly away, and then you have the psionic, psionic compression that is taken away, or the psionic dampening that is taken away. That is in the equipment that dampens you even to this day. You must rise above this. It is not that it is going away, it is your perception and the thoughts surrounding that make this go away. Again, you've heard thoughts are things, but energies are things, and thoughts are energy. So, with that said, I will conclude this particular channeling. I know he was not expecting to put both of these in the same recording, but why not? This is your friendly neighborhood Isaac's Cranium saying bye-bye, everybody. He took both of them. Okay. So you apparently are seeing both. So I think this will be good there. Wow, that channeling, he must have sped this up for a reason. You can see the bags under my eyes. So, okay. Well, that's fairly interesting how that quickly drained. It's post eclipse energy. So I will leave this here. And thank you everybody for watching this. I now close this circle within true benevolence with no conflicting agendas as of this moment in time. I'm glad you enjoyed this. Watch for future episodes. Everybody, bye-bye now.